Welcome to the History for Sleep Hub channel. Before we begin our journey, take a moment to settle in. We'd love to know where you're joining us from and what time it is in your part of the world as you listen. And please, let us know about my voice. Is it good, too fast, or too slow? Your feedback is essential and we'll use it to improve. Now, let's begin the story. Right now, over 7 billion humans are speaking. Some speak English, others Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, Hindi, Bengali, Russian. There are approximately 7,000 different human languages spoken on Earth today. Each one is a unique way humans communicate with sound, grammar, and meaning. This is the story of how these languages came to be, how they evolved, spread across continents, and shaped human civilization. This is the history of human language. Listen to the world's languages. Mandarin Chinese uses tones. The same sound with a different pitch can mean completely different things. Arabic has sounds made deep in the throat that don't exist in English. The click languages of Southern Africa use clicks as consonants. Quechua from the Andes has sounds English speakers find almost impossible to pronounce. Japanese has a completely different grammar from English. The verb comes at the end. Every language is a unique solution to the problem of human communication. Behind every language is thousands of years of evolution, migration, and change. Language defines us. Your native language, your mother tongue, shapes how you think, how you see the world, and who you are. It connects you to your ancestors, your culture, your people. When you speak your language, you're using words and sounds that have been passed down for generations, perhaps for thousands of years. Every language carries unique knowledge, cultural wisdom, ways of thinking, and perspectives on life. When a language dies, we don't just lose words, we lose an entire way of being human. Understanding language history is understanding human history itself. Languages don't stay the same. They're living, breathing, constantly changing. Every generation speaks slightly differently from their parents. Over centuries, these small changes accumulate. Eventually, people who once spoke the same original language can no longer understand each other, and two new languages are born. This is how Latin became French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. This is how one ancient language in India became Hindi, Bengali, Punjabi, and dozens more. The birth and death of languages is constant. It's happening right now as you listen to these words. Our journey spans 100,000 years. We'll start in Africa, where humans first spoke. Follow languages as they spread across the globe. Watch as language families formed and diversified. See how conquest and trade spread some languages while killing others, and explore why English, Mandarin, and Spanish dominate today, while thousands of smaller languages fight for survival. We'll discover how languages change, why they split into dialects, and what the future holds for human speech. Let's begin at the very beginning, with the first human words ever spoken. Languages aren't random. They're related in families like biological species. English, German, Dutch, and Swedish are cousins, all Germanic languages descending from a common ancestor. French, Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese are siblings, all Romance languages born from Latin. Hindi, Bengali, Punjabi, and Persian are relatives, all Indo-European. Linguists have identified about 150 major language families on Earth. The largest is Niger-Congo, with over 1,500 languages in Africa. The Austronesian family has over 1,200 languages spread from Madagascar to Easter Island. Understanding language families is like tracing human family trees. It tells us where we came from and how we're all connected. If you could travel back 500 years and speak to English speakers from 1525, you'd struggle to understand them. Their English would sound foreign, like reading Shakespeare aloud. Go back 1,000 years to Old English and it's completely incomprehensible. It looks and sounds more like German. Languages change their sounds, their grammar, their vocabulary, constantly. New words are born, old words die, pronunciations shift, and grammar simplifies or complicates. The English of 2125, 100 years from now, will sound strange to us. This constant change is normal. It's how human language works. Fighting it is like fighting the tide. Your mother tongue, the language you learned as a baby, is special. It's wired into your brain differently than any language you learn later. It feels effortless, natural, a part of your identity. People who lose their mother tongue through forced assimilation, migration, or adoption often feel a profound loss, a disconnect from their roots. Multilingual people often say they feel like different people when speaking different languages. Your mother tongue shapes your thoughts, your emotions, your very sense of self. It's not just a tool for communication, it's who you are. Protecting mother tongues means protecting human diversity and identity. Every 2 weeks, a language dies. Usually it happens when an elderly speaker passes away, taking their language with them into silence. Why do languages die? Economic pressure forces children to learn dominant languages for jobs and education. Government policies in many nations suppress minority languages. Cultural shame can lead speakers to abandon languages seen as backward or inferior. Migration to cities severs connections to heritage languages. The result is a catastrophic linguistic loss. Half of all languages will likely disappear by the year 2100. Each death erases unique knowledge, culture, and human diversity. This isn't natural selection, it's the result of specific historical forces. Understanding why languages die is the first step to saving them. Over the next 3 hours, we'll travel through time and across the globe. We'll witness the birth of human speech in Africa, follow languages as they spread to every continent, watch language families form and split, see empires spread their tongues while crushing others, and explore the incredible diversity of human speech today. We'll learn why Mandarin has 1 billion speakers, while Ainu has only a handful. We'll discover how English conquered the world. We'll meet the languages fighting for survival and those being born right now. This is the epic story of human language, our story. Let's begin in Africa 100,000 years ago when the first humans learned to speak. This is where our species, Homo sapiens, first began to speak. We'll never know what those first languages sounded like. They left no recordings, no written records. They've vanished completely. But the genetic and archaeological evidence is clear. Speech emerged in Africa. All humans alive today descend from those first African populations, and so do all our languages. The click languages of the San people in southern Africa might just hold a clue. Those sharp clicks could be echoes of humanity's very first consonants, a living link to our distant past. Now here's a big question for you. Did everyone once speak a single original language, a sort of proto-human language? Most linguists think it's likely, but it's a huge debate. The problem is, languages change incredibly fast. After about 10,000 years, any trace of a common ancestor just disappears. We can use science to reconstruct languages spoken maybe 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, but beyond that, it's all speculation. If there was one original human language spoken 100,000 years ago in Africa, it is lost to time forever. We can only guess at its sounds, its words, and its complexity. The origin of language remains one of our deepest and most fascinating mysteries. So how did we get from one or a few languages in Africa to the thousands we have today? It all started with a journey. Around 70,000 years ago, small groups of humans began migrating out of Africa. They moved into the Middle East, then spread across Asia, Europe, and eventually the entire globe. As these groups separated, so did their languages. Think of it like a family tree. A group settles in one place, and over generations as they spread out, different dialects pop up. Eventually, those dialects become so different that they're new languages. This exact process happened over and over, all across the world. The migration out of Africa wasn't just a spread of people. It was an explosion of linguistic diversity. Africa isn't just where language began, it's also home to our oldest and most diverse language families. Take the Niger-Congo family, with over 1,500 languages like Swahili and Zulu. Then there's Afro-Asiatic, which includes Arabic, Hebrew, and even the language of the ancient Egyptians. You have Nilo-Saharan in the northeast, and the famous Khoisan languages in the south with their unique cliques. These families are ancient, possibly tens of thousands of years old. Each one shows a different evolutionary path that language took as humans spread across the continent. Africa's incredible linguistic variety is a constant reminder that this is the homeland of all humanity and all of our languages. For the vast majority of our history, over 90,000 years, everyone was a hunter-gatherer. Their languages were perfectly tuned to their lives. They had smaller vocabularies, but complex grammar, with a lifetime to learn it in small, close-knit communities. They had incredibly rich terminology for their environment, dozens of words for plants, animals, and landscapes that were crucial for survival. All their knowledge was passed down through storytelling and memory, not writing. Then, about 10,000 years ago, agriculture changed everything. Societies got bigger, more complex, and so did their languages. New words for property, politics, and social status emerged. But even today, some hunter-gatherer languages survive, preserving these ancient linguistic structures. By 10,000 years ago, humans had reached every habitable continent, and languages had diversified enormously. Imagine a world with 15,000 to 20,000 different languages. Australia alone had around 250. The Americas had hundreds more. Why so many? Geographic isolation was key. Mountains, rivers, and oceans separated people. With no mass communication, each group's language evolved independently for thousands of years. Small population sizes also meant that languages could change quickly, just by random chance. The result was this incredible diversity, where every valley and every island could have its own unique way of speaking. This linguistic richness was the norm for most of human history. But modern humans weren't the only ones with a voice. When our ancestors left Africa, they met other human species, like the Neanderthals in Europe and Asia. We know we interbred with them. Many of us carry Neanderthal DNA today. So could they speak? They had the key language gene, FOXP2, and brains as large as ours. They had tools, culture, and symbolic behavior. Most scientists now believe Neanderthals had some form of language, even if it was simpler than ours. When our species met, they must have communicated somehow. Did they exchange words? Did any Neanderthal words survive in our languages? We will probably never know for sure. When they went extinct 40,000 years ago, their languages died with them. So if these ancient languages left no written records, how do we know anything about them? Linguists use an amazing technique called comparative reconstruction. It's like being a language detective. If you see similar words in related languages, like father in English, Vater in German, and pater in Latin, you can work backward. By comparing hundreds of these cognates, linguists can reconstruct the sound, grammar, and vocabulary of the ancestor language. They've even reconstructed words from Proto-Indo-European, spoken 6,000 years ago, but never written down. But this method has its limits. It only works for about 10,000 years. The deepest history of language remains hidden from us. Language is what truly makes us human. It's our superpower. Sure, other animals communicate, but only humans have this incredible system with unlimited expressive power. Language lets us talk about the past and the future, about things that aren't even real. It lets us create an infinite number of new sentences. Most importantly, it allows us to pass down vast amounts of knowledge from one generation to the next. Language enabled us to cooperate, to build, and to evolve culturally much faster than we could genetically. Every great human achievement, from art and science to civilization itself, is built on the foundation of language. Understanding its evolution is understanding our own. So, after this whole journey, huge mysteries still remain. When exactly did language begin? What did it sound like? Was there one original mother tongue or many? These are questions we may never fully answer. The distant past is silent. But here's what we can be sure of. Sometime over 100,000 years ago in Africa, humans began to speak. Those first words sparked a story that branched and spread across the entire planet. Every language spoken today is a descendant of those first African words. Every time you speak, you are part of that ancient, unbroken story. The Indo-European language family is simply extraordinary. It includes English, Spanish, French, German, Russian, Hindi, Bengali, Persian, and over 400 other languages. Can you believe it? Nearly 3 billion people, almost half the world's population, speak an Indo-European language as their mother tongue. These languages are spoken from Iceland all the way to India, from Scotland down to Sri Lanka. And yet, every single one of them descends from a single ancestor, Proto-Indo-European, a language spoken about 6,000 years ago by a small group of people somewhere in the Eurasian steppes. So how did one language spread so incredibly wide? And how do we even know they're related? The story of Indo-European is one of humanity's greatest linguistic detective stories and one of history's most consequential language expansions. So, how did we figure all this out? Well, back in 1786, a British judge in India named Sir William Jones was studying Sanskrit. He started noticing some striking similarities between it, ancient Greek and Latin. He proposed they must have all descended from a common source. This single insight sparked the entire field of comparative linguistics. Scholars began systematically comparing languages, hunting for cognates, words with a shared ancestry. Over time, they uncovered deep structural similarities across a huge swath of Eurasia. Slowly but surely, word by word, sound by sound, they reconstructed Proto-Indo-European. We now know thousands of its roots, that it had 8 grammatical cases, 3 genders, and complex verbs. We even know their words for things like snow, wolf, horse, and wheel. This language, spoken 6 millennia ago and never written down, has been partially brought back to life through pure linguistic science. It's an absolutely astonishing achievement. But where did these Proto-Indo-European speakers actually live? The leading theory, known as the steppe hypothesis, places them in the Pontic-Caspian steppes, that vast grassland stretching from modern-day Ukraine to Kazakhstan around 4000 BCE, and we have archaeology to back this up. A group called the Yamnaya culture emerged here right around that time. They were pastoralists, herding cattle and horses, and they had wheeled vehicles and wagons. This lines up perfectly with the reconstructed language, which has words for wheel and axle, but not for settled farming. Then, around 3000 BCE, these people began migrating outward in all directions, spreading into Europe, Central Asia, India, and Iran. Everywhere they went, they brought their language with them. This expansion was one of the greatest migrations in history, and their language became the foundation for dozens of language families that would come to dominate Eurasia. As these populations separated, Proto-Indo-European fractured into many different branches. The Celtic branch spread across Western Europe, giving us Irish, Welsh, and Breton. The Germanic branch covers Northern Europe, that's English, German, Dutch, and the Scandinavian languages. The Romance branch, which descended from Latin, includes French, Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese. The Slavic branch dominates Eastern Europe with languages like Russian, Polish, and Czech. And then there's the massive Indo-Iranian branch, which includes Hindi, Bengali, Persian, and Kurdish. There are also smaller branches like Greek, Albanian, and Armenian. Each branch represents a unique migration path and thousands of years of language evolution. Some branches, like the Anatolian and Tocharian languages, have gone extinct, but together they all paint a vivid picture of how one language diversified over 6,000 years into the hundreds of languages we know today. Let's zoom in on one of those branches to see how this works. The Romance languages, all born from Latin. 2,000 years ago, the Roman Empire spread Latin across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. But the Latin spoken by everyday people, called Vulgar Latin, was different from the classical Latin of literature. When the empire collapsed around 500 CE, these regions became isolated. The Vulgar Latin in each area began to evolve on its own. In Gaul, it became French. In the Iberian Peninsula, it turned into Spanish and Portuguese. In Italy, it became Italian. By 800 CE, these were all distinct languages. A French speaker couldn't understand a Spanish speaker, yet both of their languages came from Latin just a few centuries earlier. This is language change in fast forward, a process that repeated itself across all the Indo-European branches. Now, what about English? English is a Germanic language, a cousin to German and Dutch. Around 500 CE, Germanic tribes, the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, invaded Britain and brought their language, which we now call Old English. Honestly, it sounds completely foreign to modern ears, with totally different grammar and vocabulary. Then came a huge turning point, the Norman conquest of England in 1066. The new rulers spoke Norman French, and for the next 300 years, English absorbed a massive amount of French vocabulary. The result is the English we speak today, a language with a Germanic grammatical skeleton, but dressed in Romance vocabulary. That's why we have pairs like begin and commence, spät or help and aid, a Germanic word, and its French synonym. From there, English spread globally through colonization, and today, it's the world's lingua franca. One small Germanic dialect from a little island literally conquered the world. Let's travel east. Around 1500 BCE, a wave of Indo-European speakers migrated into the Indian subcontinent from the northwest. They brought with them an early form of Sanskrit, which over centuries evolved into the modern Indo-Aryan languages we know today. Hindi, Bengali, Punjabi, Gujarati, and dozens more. Today, over 1 billion people speak an Indo-Aryan language. Hindi alone has 600 million speakers, making it the world's third largest language. As these languages spread across northern India, they mixed with the indigenous Dravidian languages of the south. This created the incredible linguistic diversity we see in India today, with 22 officially recognized languages and hundreds of regional ones. The Indo-Aryan migration was one of the most consequential expansions of the Indo-European family, shaping the entire linguistic landscape of South Asia for the next 3,500 years. So why was the Indo-European family so wildly successful while others remained localized? Several factors played a role. First, technology. The early Indo-Europeans had domesticated horses, wheeled vehicles, and later, bronze weapons, which gave them a huge advantage. Their pastoral lifestyle also made them mobile and ready for long-distance migration. They also seem to have had high population growth, allowing them to outnumber indigenous groups over time. But perhaps the biggest factor was simply timing. They spread during the Bronze Age, a time when global populations were smaller and less organized. Later language expansions, like Arabic or English, often required full-scale military conquest or colonization. The initial Indo-European spread seems to have been a slower, more gradual process of migration and population replacement. Over centuries, they simply became dominant, shaping half the world's linguistic map. Today, Indo-European languages absolutely dominate the globe. They are the official languages of Europe, the Americas, and much of South Asia. English is the undisputed lingua franca of business, science, and entertainment. Spanish is growing rapidly, while Hindi and Bengali each have hundreds of millions of speakers. But this dominance has come at a cost. All across the world, indigenous languages are disappearing, replaced by English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Russian. The success of the Indo-European family has directly contributed to the decline of other languages. This isn't some natural, inevitable process. It's the direct result of colonization, economic pressure, and language policies. Understanding the history of Indo-European dominance helps us see the power structures and linguistic inequality that still exist in our world today. And the story isn't over. The Indo-European languages are still changing. American English is already different from British English. Mexican Spanish is different from the Spanish spoken in Spain. Give it another 1,000 years, and these dialects might become separate, mutually unintelligible languages. New Indo-European languages are constantly being born through this process of dialect divergence. At the same time, smaller members of the family are dying out. Scottish Gaelic has only about 60,000 speakers left. Languages like Cornish and Manx have already gone extinct, though some are seeing revival efforts. The family is simultaneously expanding its most dominant languages while losing its smaller minority ones. This tension defines the linguistic reality of our modern world. Understanding the past of the Indo-European family gives us a powerful lens to understand the future of all languages. Sino-Tibetan is the world's second largest language family by number of speakers. That's over 1.4 billion people. It includes all Chinese languages, Tibetan, Burmese, and hundreds of smaller languages across East and Southeast Asia. Mandarin Chinese alone has over 900 million native speakers, making it the most spoken native language on the planet. This family absolutely dominates China, Tibet, Myanmar, and parts of India, Nepal, and Bhutan. Unlike some other language families that are spread out, Sino-Tibetan is really concentrated in East Asia. but the sheer number of speakers is staggering. Understanding this family means understanding a quarter of humanity's linguistic heritage. So let's dive in and explore how these languages evolved and why Mandarin became so incredibly dominant. The story of Sino-Tibetan begins long ago, likely in northern China, around 6,000 to 7,000 years back. As populations spread, the language split into two main branches: Semitic, which includes all Chinese varieties, and Tibeto-Burman, which includes Tibetan, Burmese, and many other languages. The Semitic branch grew up in the Yellow River Valley, the very cradle of Chinese civilization. Fast forward to about 3,000 years ago, and we find Old Chinese documented in oracle bone inscriptions. This ancient language would eventually evolve into Middle Chinese, and then into the many distinct Chinese languages we know today. Meanwhile, the Tibeto-Burman branch spread out into the Himalayas and Southeast Asia, diversifying into hundreds of languages perfectly adapted to life in the mountains. Here is a common misconception. People say Chinese as if it is a single language, but it's actually a family of related but very distinct languages: Mandarin, Cantonese, Wu, Min, Hakka. These can be as different from each other as Spanish is from Portuguese. A Mandarin speaker can't just understand Cantonese without actually studying it. They're mutually unintelligible. So why are they often called dialects instead of separate languages? It's largely political. The idea of one unified Chinese language helps promote national unity, so the differences are downplayed by labeling them as dialects. Linguistically, though, they're separate languages. The one thing that ties them all together is the writing system. Everyone uses Chinese characters, which lets speakers of different Chinese languages communicate in writing, even when they can't understand each other's speech. So how did Mandarin become the top dog? Specifically, Standard Mandarin, which is based on the Beijing pronunciation, is China's official language and the world's most spoken. But this is a pretty recent development. Historically, China didn't have a single national language. People spoke hundreds of regional ones. In the early 20th century, Chinese nationalists decided the country needed a common language for modernization and unity. They chose Mandarin because it was spoken in the north, China's political heartland. After 1949, the government aggressively promoted Mandarin through schools and media. Today, over 70% of Chinese citizens speak it. Regional languages like Cantonese and Wu still have millions of speakers, but they're declining, especially among younger people. The rise of Mandarin is a powerful example of how government policy can totally transform a country's linguistic landscape in just a few decades. One of the most fascinating features of Chinese languages is that they are tonal, meaning the pitch of your voice changes a word's meaning. Mandarin has 4 main tones plus a neutral one. Take the syllable ma. Depending on the tone, it can mean mother, hemp, horse, or scold. Get the tone wrong, and you've said something completely different. Cantonese has even more, with 6 to 9 tones. In fact, about 70% of the world's languages are tonal, mostly in Africa and Asia. For English speakers, tones can be incredibly tricky to master. But for native speakers, they're as natural as consonants and vowels. Tones aren't about singing or emphasis, they're a fundamental part of the word itself. This tonal nature is what can make Chinese languages sound so melodic to outsiders. It's a beautiful example of how languages adapt and evolve. Now let's head to the Himalayas and Southeast Asia to look at the Tibeto-Burman branch. Tibetan is spoken by about 6 million people in Tibet, Bhutan, Nepal, and India, and it has dozens of dialects, many of which are not mutually intelligible. The language developed heavily under the influence of Buddhism, borrowing lots of religious vocabulary from Sanskrit. Burmese is the official language of Myanmar, with 33 million native speakers. It has its own unique script, which is one of the most circular-looking writing systems in the world. Both Tibetan and Burmese have rich literary traditions stretching back over 1,000 years. But today they face modern pressures. The use of the Tibetan language is facing restrictions, while English often dominates in education in Myanmar. These ancient languages are being squeezed between dominant neighbors and globalization. The Himalayan region and the highlands of Southeast Asia are hotspots of incredible linguistic diversity. Hundreds of Tibeto-Burman languages are spoken by small communities tucked away in isolated mountain valleys. We're talking about languages like Newari in Nepal, Lepcha in Sikkim, and Karen in Myanmar. Mountains are great at creating linguistic diversity because they keep populations isolated. Over centuries, each valley can develop its own unique language. These languages often preserve ancient features that have been lost in their more dominant cousins, and they hold unique vocabulary for local plants, animals, and culture. But they're highly endangered. As young people move to cities, they learn languages like Mandarin or Burmese, and many of these mountain languages are left with only elderly speakers. Each one that disappears is a permanent loss of human knowledge and diversity. Over the last 200 years, Chinese migration has spread Chinese languages all over the globe. If you visit older Chinatowns in places like San Francisco, New York, or Sydney, you'll hear a lot of Cantonese. That's because the first waves of immigrants often came from Guangdong province. More recent immigration, however, brings Mandarin speakers, creating linguistic divides within these communities. Often second and third generation immigrants speak English better than Chinese, and they risk losing their ancestral language. But many families work hard to maintain it through weekend schools. What's really interesting is that these overseas communities sometimes preserve language varieties that are declining back in China itself, like Hokkien or Hakka. The Chinese diaspora has become a living museum of China's rich linguistic diversity. The Chinese writing system is truly unique. The characters are logograms, meaning each symbol represents a whole word or a part of a word's meaning, not just a sound. This is what makes the writing system independent of pronunciation. A Mandarin speaker and a Cantonese speaker can read the exact same character but pronounce it completely differently. This system is the glue that unifies the Chinese languages despite their spoken differences. But it has a downside. It takes years to learn thousands of characters. In the 20th century, China simplified many characters to boost literacy. Today, mainland China uses these simplified characters, while Taiwan and Hong Kong still use the traditional forms, creating another divide. It's a beautiful ancient system, but its complexity makes Chinese harder to learn than languages with alphabets. So, what does the future hold for Sino-Tibetan languages? Mandarin will almost certainly continue to grow as China's global influence expands. More and more people around the world are learning it as a second language. But this success comes at a cost to the family's linguistic diversity. Hundreds of smaller Sino-Tibetan languages are endangered. Government promotion of Mandarin, urbanization, and economic pressures all push people toward the dominant language. Some languages, like Manchu, have effectively died out, with only a handful of elderly speakers remaining. The great irony is that as Mandarin becomes more important globally, the diversity within its own family is collapsing. Will the future be monolingual in Mandarin, or can this incredible diversity be preserved? Ever wondered which continent is the most linguistically diverse place on Earth? It's Africa. With over 2,000 languages spoken, that's about 1/3 of all languages in the world. Its linguistic richness is unparalleled. Nigeria alone has over 500 languages, and Cameroon has almost 300. This incredible diversity makes sense when you remember that Africa is the birthplace of humanity. Languages have simply had more time to grow and change here than anywhere else. 4 major language families dominate the continent: Niger-Congo, Afro-Asiatic, Nilo-Saharan, and Khoisan. Yet, despite their deep historical roots, African languages are often overlooked. Let's change that and dive into this incredible linguistic world. The largest of these families is Niger-Congo. It's actually the world's biggest language family by the number of languages, with over 2,500 spoken by 700 million people across sub-Saharan Africa. This family includes well-known languages like Swahili in the east, Yoruba and Igbo in the west, and Zulu and Xhosa in the south. The family gets its name from the Niger and Congo rivers, and its original form was likely spoken in West Africa around 10,000 years ago. A major branch of this family, the Bantu languages, spread across Central, Eastern, and Southern Africa in what's known as the Bantu expansion. This migration, one of the most significant in human history, spread their languages across half the continent. One of the most famous Niger-Congo languages is Swahili, which acts as a bridge language, or lingua franca, across East Africa. While it's native to the coasts of Kenya and Tanzania, it's spoken as a second language by over 100 million people. Its story is fascinating. It emerged about 1,000 years ago as a trade language, born from interactions between Arab traders and local Bantu speakers. This blend is obvious in its vocabulary. About 35% of Swahili words come from Arabic. Even its name, Swahili, comes from the Arabic word for coasts. Today, it's an official language in several countries and is even used in the African Union, proving how languages can unite diverse cultures. The Bantu branch itself is incredibly diverse, stretching from Cameroon all the way down to South Africa. It includes languages like Zulu, Xhosa, Shona, and hundreds more, spoken by over 300 million people. Despite their variety, they share clear signs of a common ancestry. One key feature is their noun class system. For example, in Swahili, mtoto means child, but watoto means children. The prefix changes to show the number. They also share basic words for family, body parts, and everyday objects. The spread of these languages during the Bantu expansion about 3,000 years ago was remarkable, as they absorbed or displaced other language groups, shaping the linguistic map of southern Africa we see today. Many African languages have a musical quality because they are tonal, meaning the pitch of a word can change its meaning. Yoruba, for instance, has 3 tones, but the complexity doesn't stop there. Many have intricate noun class systems with 10 to 20 different categories. Their verb systems can be incredibly detailed, with multiple tenses and forms to show if an action is happening toward or away from the speaker. This richness shows just how sophisticated these languages are, often far more grammatically complex than European languages. The old colonial idea that African languages were primitive is just plain wrong. Modern linguistics proves all languages are equally complex and valid. Unfortunately, European colonization had a devastating impact on Africa's linguistic landscape. Colonial powers imposed their own languages, English, French, Portuguese, in government, schools, and business. Local languages were pushed aside, seen as inferior. This created a linguistic hierarchy that still exists today. Even after independence, many African nations kept the colonial languages as official to avoid favoring one ethnic group over another. The result? People often speak their mother tongue at home, but switch to a European language for work and school. This puts immense pressure on younger generations to abandon their native languages, leading to a silent extinction of hundreds of languages. In Africa, your language is a core part of your identity. It tells people your ethnic group, where you're from, your heritage. This makes language policy a really sensitive topic. In a country like Nigeria with hundreds of languages, how do you choose a national language without causing conflict? Promoting just the major ones like Hausa, Yoruba, and Igbo would upset speakers of the other 497. So, English remains the neutral official language. This same dilemma plays out across the continent. Tanzania successfully promoted Swahili as a unifying national language, but each nation has to find its own path, balancing respect for diversity with the need for national unity. Moving north, we find the Afro-Asiatic family, Africa's second largest with around 400 languages and 500 million speakers. This group includes Arabic, spoken across North Africa, Amharic in Ethiopia, and Hausa in West Africa. It even includes ancient languages like Egyptian. The family likely originated in the Horn of Africa or the Middle East about 15,000 years ago. The expansion of Islam from the 7th century helped spread Arabic, making it the most widely spoken language in Africa today. But this success came at a price, as Arabic displaced many indigenous languages, like the Berber languages, which are now endangered. Down in southern Africa, we find the truly unique Khoisan languages, famous for their click consonants. These are sounds made by drawing air sharply into the mouth. Some of these languages have over 100 different consonants, including many types of clicks. Spoken by San hunter-gatherers and Kuko pastoralists, these are among the world's oldest languages, possibly holding clues to humanity's earliest speech. But they are highly endangered. The Bantu expansion pushed them out, colonization devastated their communities, and today younger speakers are shifting to dominant languages. Interestingly, some Bantu languages like Zulu and Xhosa borrowed clicks, preserving a linguistic ghost of these ancient peoples. So what does the future hold? It's uncertain. Dominant languages like Swahili and Yoruba will likely thrive, but hundreds of smaller languages are at risk. Urbanization, economic pressures, and education systems often favor dominant or colonial languages. Yet there is hope. Some nations are investing in mother tongue education, and technology is helping to document and preserve endangered languages. Cultural movements are fostering pride in indigenous tongues. Ever wonder how languages are related? Let's dive into the Semitic languages, a branch of the Afro-Asiatic family spoken across the Middle East and North Africa for over 5,000 years. This family is huge, including Arabic, with over 300 million native speakers, Amharic in Ethiopia with 25 million, and Hebrew with 9 million, not to mention Tigrinya, Aramaic, and Maltese. Ancient tongues like Akkadian, Phoenician, and Aramaic belong to great civilizations. Their key feature is their consonantal roots. Change the vowels and you get a whole family of related words. These languages once dominated the ancient Middle East. Today, Arabic reigns supreme thanks to the spread of Islam. Understanding this family is like unlocking the history of the Middle East, the birth of monotheism, and Islam's journey across continents. Back in 632 CE, when the Prophet Muhammad passed away, Arabic was spoken by maybe 5 million people, mostly on the Arabian Peninsula. But then, an incredible expansion began. Within just 100 years, Islamic conquests carried the Arabic language from Spain all the way to Central Asia. People in conquered lands often converted to Islam and adopted Arabic as the language of faith, government, and high culture. Local languages in North Africa and the Levant slowly faded, replaced by Arabic. It's one of the most dramatic language spreads in history, transforming a regional dialect into a continental lingua franca in a few short centuries. By the year 1000, Arabic was the dominant language from the Atlantic to the Persian Gulf, becoming the language of science and philosophy during Islam's golden age. Today, it's the 5th most spoken language in the world. So, what is Arabic? It's actually a bit complicated. There are 2 main forms, Classical Arabic and the many dialects. Classical Arabic is the formal literary language of the Quran. Modern Standard Arabic, which is based on it, is what you'll see on the news, in books, and in schools across the Arab world. But here's the catch. Nobody speaks it as their first language at home. Instead, people grow up speaking local dialects like Egyptian, Levantine, Gulf, or Maghrebi, and these can be so different that a speaker from Morocco might struggle to understand someone from Saudi Arabia without switching to Standard Arabic. This phenomenon is called diglossia. It's like having a high formal language for public life and a low informal one for everything else. The dialects are the living, breathing languages, while Standard Arabic is preserved for cultural and religious unity. Now for an incredible story, Hebrew. It's the only language in history to be successfully brought back from the dead. Ancient Hebrew was spoken in Israel about 3,000 years ago, but after the Roman conquest around 70 CE, the Jewish people were scattered across the globe. Hebrew survived only as a liturgical language, used for prayers and religious texts, but not for daily chat. For almost 2,000 years, Jews spoke the languages of their new homes, Yiddish in Europe, Ladino in Spain. Then, in the late 19th century, activists like Eliezer ben Yehuda decided to revive it. They created new words for modern things, adapted the grammar, and insisted on speaking only Hebrew. When Israel was founded in 1948, Hebrew became its national language. Today, 9 million people speak it fluently. It's an absolutely unprecedented linguistic achievement. Let's talk about a fallen giant, Aramaic. There was a time when Aramaic was the lingua franca of the entire Middle East. From about 700 BCE to 600 CE, it was the language of empires, the Persian, the Babylonian, you name it. It's the language Jesus spoke, and parts of the Bible were written in it. But when Arabic rose, Aramaic was pushed into small, isolated communities. Today, only about 500,000 people speak it, mostly Assyrian Christians in Iraq and Syria. Recent conflicts and persecution have devastated these communities, forcing many to flee. In their new homes in Europe or America, their children are growing up speaking English or German, not Aramaic. A language that once ruled an empire is now fighting for survival in diaspora communities. It's a sad reminder of how quickly a language's fate can turn. Heading south to Africa, we find Ethiopia and Eritrea, home to their own unique branch of Semitic languages. These arrived from Arabia about 3,000 years ago. Amharic is now Ethiopia's official language, spoken by 25 million people. Tigrinya has another 9 million speakers. And then there's Ge'ez, the ancient liturgical language of Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity, much like Latin was for the Catholic Church. What's really cool is their script. The Ge'ez script has over 200 characters. Developing in relative isolation, these languages have unique features influenced by indigenous Cushitic languages. The result is a fascinating blend that sounds Semitic but has hints of African grammar. Ethiopia's mountainous terrain helped preserve these ancient languages, making it one of the most linguistically diverse nations in Africa. Have you ever heard of a Semitic language that's an official language of the European Union? Meet Maltese. This language evolved from an Arabic dialect spoken in Malta after the Arab conquest in the 9th century. When Christians reconquered the island, the language stayed but began to evolve on its own path. It absorbed a massive amount of vocabulary from Italian, Sicilian, and English, and even switched from the Arabic script to the Latin alphabet. Today, about 500,000 people speak Maltese. It's a Semitic language at its core, but you wouldn't know it from listening. It's completely unintelligible with modern Arabic. Maltese is a fascinating linguistic bridge between the Arab and European worlds, proving that a language's family tree doesn't always define its cultural identity. Through Islam, Arabic has left its mark on languages all over the world. During Islam's golden age, Arabic was the language of science. Words like algebra, algorithm, alcohol, admiral, and coffee all came into European languages from Arabic. Further east, languages like Persian, Turkish, and Urdu absorbed thousands of Arabic words. The religious importance of the Quran also gives Arabic a special status, even in non-Arab Muslim countries. In places like Indonesia and Pakistan, millions learn Quranic Arabic for religious study, even if they don't speak it conversationally. This sacred role ensures Arabic's influence continues to be felt across the globe, with classical Arabic frozen in time by the Quran, studied by Muslims everywhere. Despite this global influence, the Arab world faces its own linguistic challenges. The spoken dialects are drifting further apart. Egyptian and Moroccan Arabic, for example, are becoming so different they could almost be considered separate languages. Young people often mix Arabic with English or French, creating new hybrid forms of speech. At the same time, media and the internet are giving more prominence to these dialects over modern Standard Arabic. This has sparked a debate. Should they enforce Standard Arabic to maintain unity, or let the dialects evolve naturally? The answer will shape the future of Arab identity itself. Will Arabic remain one unified language, or will it eventually split, much like Latin broke apart into the Romance languages? Ultimately, no language family is more deeply tied to religion than the Semitic languages. Hebrew is the language of Judaism, Arabic the language of Islam, Aramaic the language of Jesus, and Ge'ez the liturgical tongue of Ethiopian Christianity. This connection has been both a blessing and a curse. It helps preserve these languages, as religious communities maintain them for centuries through worship. But it also politicizes them, freezing them in sacred texts and resisting natural change. Understanding this profound relationship between language and faith is the key to understanding why these languages have survived, spread, or died out over thousands of years. Imagine stepping back to 1492. The Americas weren't a silent wilderness. They were a vibrant tapestry of sound, home to perhaps 2,000 distinct languages spoken from the frozen Arctic all the way to Tierra del Fuego. These languages were as different from each other as English is from Chinese, the result of at least 15,000 years of human history. This incredible diversity flourished in isolation, nurtured by mountains, rainforests, and deserts. But then, everything changed. European colonization brought not just new people, but devastating diseases that wiped out up to 90% of the indigenous population. Languages like Spanish, Portuguese, English, and French were imposed, often by force. Today, the vast majority of these ancient American languages are either on the brink of extinction or have already vanished. Join me as we explore what was lost, what miraculously survives, and the fight to keep these voices alive. Let's look at the sheer scale of this linguistic world. Before colonization, several massive language families dominated the continents. In North America, you had the Nardine languages, which include Navajo and Apache. The Algonquian family stretched across the east and central regions, with languages like Cree and Ojibwe. The Iroquoian languages, including Mohawk and Cherokee, were spoken in the northeast. Further west and south, the Uto-Aztecan family gave us Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs. Central America was the heartland of the Mayan languages, while the Andes echoed with Quechua, the tongue of the Inca Empire. And across the vast Amazon basin and the Caribbean, you'd hear Tupian and Arawakan languages. Each of these families represents a deep history, thousands of years of human culture and evolution. Yet this incredible richness has been almost completely erased from our collective memory. Let's zoom in on Nahuatl, the language of the powerful Aztec Empire. When the Spanish arrived in central Mexico, millions spoke it. Nahuatl wasn't just a spoken dialect. It had a rich tradition of literature, poetry, and historical records. Ironically, the Spanish colonizers learned Nahuatl themselves to convert the local population, which helped it spread as a common language. Nahuatl has given us many words we use every day, like chocolate, tomato, avocado, and coyote. Today, about 1.7 million people still speak varieties of Nahuatl, but the language is endangered as younger generations shift to Spanish. It's a language of incredible complexity, with special forms for showing respect and the ability to combine many ideas into a single, elegant word. The decline of Nahuatl isn't just the loss of words. It's the fading of a great literary and cultural tradition. Now let's travel south to the Andes, the home of Quechua, the voice of the mighty Inca Empire. Today, between 8 to 10 million people still speak Quechua, making it the most widely spoken indigenous language in all of South America. It's even an official language in Peru and Bolivia. Quechua grammar has a fascinating feature called evidentiality, where speakers must specify in the verb itself how they know something. Did they see it firsthand, hear it from someone else, or are they just guessing? Words like llama, puma, and quinoa all come to us from Quechua. But despite its millions of speakers, Quechua is in decline. It's often associated with rural poverty, and many parents encourage their children to learn Spanish for better opportunities. What was once the language of an empire is now at risk of becoming a marker of marginalization. In Central America, the Maya civilization was never a single empire with a single language. It was a collection of city-states speaking dozens of related Mayan languages. Today, about 6 million people continue to speak them, including Quiche, Quechua, and Yucatec Maya. In fact, Guatemala recognizes 21 distinct Mayan languages. The ancient Maya had a sophisticated hieroglyphic writing system, a puzzle that was only fully cracked in the late 20th century. Modern Mayan languages carry on this legacy with complex grammar and numeral systems. In some isolated communities, these languages are still thriving, with children learning them as their first language. But as roads, schools, and the modern economy reach these areas, Spanish is putting immense pressure on them. The future of these ancient languages hangs in the balance. Back in North America, we find a remarkable success story, Navajo. With around 170,000 speakers, it's the most spoken indigenous language north of Mexico. Its grammar is famously complex. For instance, the verb you use for handling an object changes depending on its shape. During World War II, this complexity became a powerful weapon. Navajo speakers were recruited as code talkers, using their language to create an unbreakable military code that was crucial to the war effort. This brought immense prestige to the language. Today, the Navajo Nation actively promotes the language through immersion schools and media. But even Navajo is facing a decline as English becomes more dominant among the youth. The good news is that communities are recognizing this loss and fighting to revitalize their linguistic heritage. Beyond the major families, the Americas are home to linguistic mysteries known as language isolates. These are languages with no known relatives, unique branches on the human family tree. Languages like Zuni in New Mexico, Haida in British Columbia, and Piraha in the Amazon are all isolates. They might be the last survivors of ancient language families that have otherwise vanished completely. Each time an isolate language goes extinct, an entire irreplaceable lineage of human thought and expression is permanently erased. They remind us that the story of human language is far more complex and mysterious than we often imagine, and that so much of it has already been lost to time. One of the darkest chapters in this story is the boarding school era. From the late 1800s to the 1970s, the US and Canadian governments forcibly removed Indigenous children from their homes and sent them to residential schools. The goal was explicit and brutal. Kill the Indian, save the man. Children were forbidden from speaking their native languages and were often severely punished if they did. This policy inflicted deep trauma on generations of people and shattered the chain of language transmission from elder to child. Many returned home unable to even speak with their own grandparents. This deliberate cultural destruction nearly finished what 400 years of colonization had started. The language revitalization efforts happening today are a direct fight against this painful legacy. But the story doesn't end in tragedy. Across the Americas, indigenous communities are fighting back to reclaim and revive their languages. They're creating immersion schools where children are taught entirely in their ancestral tongues. Language nests provide daycare environments where toddlers are surrounded by the language, creating a new generation of native speakers. Technology is also playing a role, with language apps, online dictionaries, and social media becoming tools for preservation. Incredibly, some languages like Miami and Wampanoag have been brought back from the brink, revived from historical documents even after the last speaker had passed. These efforts are a powerful act of resistance and cultural survival, a declaration that these voices will not be silenced. So what has truly been lost? Of the thousands of languages spoken in 1492, only a few hundred survive. Over 700 are completely extinct. It took 15,000 years for this incredible diversity to evolve, and just 500 years to nearly destroy it. We lost more than just words. We lost unique ways of understanding the world, profound knowledge about ecosystems encoded in vocabulary, and entire libraries of oral literature, myths, histories, and poetry. This wasn't a natural process. It was the result of deliberate policies of genocide and forced assimilation. For over 65,000 years, Aboriginal Australians have carried the world's oldest continuous culture. When Europeans arrived in 1788, the continent was a vibrant tapestry of about 250 distinct languages, woven from dozens of language families. This incredible diversity bloomed over tens of thousands of years in isolation, after rising sea levels cut Australia off from the world. These languages, developed independently in one of the planet's most challenging environments, hold some of humanity's most ancient linguistic structures and the longest oral traditions ever known. Imagine stories passed down for 10,000 years, later verified by geological evidence. These languages are truly treasures of human heritage, yet colonization brought devastation. Today, only about 120 Aboriginal languages survive, and tragically, most are critically endangered, with only a few elderly speakers left. The Pama-Nyungan family is Australia's linguistic giant, covering about 90% of the continent, with around 200 languages. The name itself is fascinating. It comes from Pama, meaning person in the northeast, and Nyunga, meaning person in the southwest. The clear similarities between these languages, like Warlpiri in the center or Yolngu Matha in the north, prove a common ancestry, likely dating back 5,000 or 6,000 years. But what about the other 10% of Australia? It's home to over a dozen other language families with no proven connection to Pama-Nyungan or each other. This suggests multiple, incredibly ancient language lineages. Australia is like a living linguistic laboratory, showing us how languages can diversify and evolve in isolation over immense stretches of time. Aboriginal languages are packed with extraordinary features you rarely find anywhere else. For example, many don't have words for specific numbers beyond 3 or 4, using terms like a few or many instead. This doesn't limit their thinking at all. In fact, they use incredibly precise spatial and kinship terms that many European languages lack. Instead of left and right, many speakers use absolute directions: north, south, east, west. This means they have an almost built-in compass, an extraordinary sense of spatial orientation. And their kinship systems? They are mind-blowingly complex, with different words for relatives on your mother's side versus your father's, and for older versus younger siblings. These features show how languages perfectly adapt to cultural needs. They aren't primitive. They are highly sophisticated systems, refined over tens of thousands of years. One of the most incredible creations of Aboriginal culture is the songline. These are vast, epic song cycles that act as navigational and cultural guides. They tell the stories of ancestral beings creating the landscape during the dream time. Each song corresponds to a specific location, a waterhole, or a landmark. By singing the songs in the correct sequence, a person can navigate for hundreds of miles across what might seem like a featureless desert. Songlines are maps, history books, legal codes, and sacred texts all rolled into one, and all transmitted orally, without any writing. They represent one of the most sophisticated memory systems ever developed by humanity. Some songlines even describe coastal areas now underwater, proving they are over 10,000 years old. As languages die, these songlines vanish, and with them, millennia of irreplaceable knowledge. From around 1910 to 1970, a dark chapter in Australian history unfolded: the stolen generations. Government policies led to the forcible removal of Aboriginal children from their families. Children, particularly those of mixed descent, were taken to be raised in white institutions or adopted by white families. The explicit goal was assimilation, to erase Aboriginal identity and culture. Children were forbidden from speaking their languages, and many never saw their families again. This policy was catastrophic for language transmission. An entire generation lost their mother tongues and as adults couldn't pass them on. Languages that had survived for 65,000 years were nearly wiped out in just 1 or 2 generations. The trauma of this cultural genocide echoes to this day as communities try to heal and revive what was so brutally taken. The scale of the language endangerment crisis is staggering. Of the 250 languages spoken in 1788, only about 120 survive. And of those, a mere 13 are considered strong, meaning children are still learning them. About 100 are on the brink of extinction, with only a handful of elderly speakers remaining. Every year we lose more. When an Aboriginal language dies, it's not just words that are lost. It's the end of tens of thousands of years of unique linguistic evolution, an irreplaceable piece of human heritage. Colonization disrupted traditional life, English became dominant, and Aboriginal languages were stigmatized. In a heartbreaking choice, some parents stopped teaching their children their own language, hoping to give them a better chance in mainstream society. The loss is simply catastrophic, but there is hope. Some Aboriginal languages remain strong. Yolngu Mata in Arnhem Land, Walpiri in Central Australia, and Pitjant Jatjara in the Western Desert each have around 3,000 speakers, and children are learning them. These languages have survived where communities are more remote, traditional culture is strong, and bilingual education programs offer support. Media created in these languages, radio, TV, and online content, is also a huge help. But even these strong languages face immense pressure from English and the internet. Maintaining them requires conscious, dedicated effort from communities who value their language enough to teach it, use it, and create new ways for it to thrive in the modern world. Their survival proves that it is possible to maintain indigenous languages, but it takes commitment and resources. Across Australia, Aboriginal communities are fighting to bring their languages back from the brink. Language centres work tirelessly with elders to document languages before they're lost forever. Master-apprentice programs pair fluent speakers with young learners for intensive immersion. Technology is also playing a role with apps and online dictionaries. In a truly remarkable story, the Kaurna language of South Australia was revived from 19th century records, even without living speakers. Now, children are learning Kaurna in schools. These efforts are fueled by incredible dedication. Communities fundraise, volunteers give their time, and elders share their knowledge. They refuse to let their languages die, asserting their right to culture and identity. Supporting them is supporting human rights. Many Aboriginal people today speak a unique variety of English known as Aboriginal English. It has its own distinct grammar, pronunciation, and vocabulary shaped by traditional Aboriginal languages. For instance, it might use different pronouns or not mark past tense in the same way as standard Australian English. This is not broken English. It's a legitimate, complex language variety that carries a powerful sense of cultural identity and community. However, it's often stigmatized as incorrect, creating barriers in education and employment. This raises important questions about language rights and discrimination. Aboriginal English shows the incredible resilience of culture, blending indigenous and colonial languages to create a new, vibrant identity. Understanding and respecting it is a vital part of respecting Aboriginal peoples. So what can we all learn from this? Aboriginal languages offer profound insights into the human mind. They show us how cultures can thrive for millennia, with sophisticated oral knowledge systems. They reveal entirely different ways of thinking about time, space, and family. They expand our understanding of what language can be, and they hold priceless knowledge about Australia's unique ecosystems. Their loss impoverishes all of humanity. Protecting these languages is about protecting human diversity and honoring the world's oldest living culture. As Australia confronts this linguistic crisis, the world is watching. Can a wealthy modern nation find a way to preserve its indigenous heritage? The answer will truly define the soul of a nation. Have you ever wondered how people from Madagascar, the Philippines, and Hawaii could share a linguistic ancestor? The answer lies in one of the most incredible stories of human migration, the expansion of the Austronesian language family. This family boasts over 1,200 languages spread across half the globe, from the coast of Africa to the remote Easter Island. This isn't just a story about words, it's the story of humanity's greatest maritime adventure. It all began about 5,000 years ago, when a group of people set sail from what is now Taiwan, heading east into the vast, unknown Pacific. Using only the stars, ocean currents, and the flight of birds as their guides, these master navigators settled thousands of islands over millennia. This epic journey created a breathtaking tapestry of linguistic diversity. Think about it. Papua New Guinea alone is home to over 800 Austronesian languages. From Malagasy in Madagascar to Tagalog in the Philippines and Māori in New Zealand, understanding these languages is to understand one of history's greatest human achievements. Believe it or not, all 1,200+ Austronesian languages trace their origins back to a single island, Taiwan. About 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, a language we now call Proto-Austronesian was spoken there. The proof is in the diversity. Linguists know that the greatest variety of languages within a family is always found at its point of origin. And in Taiwan, we find 9 of the 10 primary branches of the Austronesian family. The thousands of other Austronesian languages spoken across the world all descend from just one single branch that left the island. Around 3000 BCE, for reasons we can only guess at, perhaps population growth, climate change, or just a pure spirit of adventure, some of these speakers migrated south to the Philippines. From there, they spread like wildfire, east across the Pacific and west towards Southeast Asia. It's a bittersweet story, though. Today, the indigenous languages of Taiwan, the very cradle of this massive language family, are endangered, spoken by a tiny fraction of the population. The homeland is at risk of losing the very evidence of its incredible linguistic legacy. Let's zoom into Southeast Asia, where Malay and Indonesian reign as major Austronesian languages. Malay is spoken by about 80 million people across Malaysia, Brunei, and Singapore. Its standardized form, Indonesian, is the official language of Indonesia, with 43 million native speakers and a staggering 156 million second language speakers, making it one of the most widely spoken languages on Earth. For centuries, Malay served as the lingua franca of trade throughout the region. So when Indonesia declared independence in 1945, choosing Malay as the national language was a brilliant political move. In a nation with over 700 distinct ethnic groups and languages, Malay was a neutral choice that didn't favor the largest group, the Javanese. It became a powerful tool for unity. Today, Indonesian continues to evolve, absorbing words from regional languages and English. It's a living, breathing example of how a language can be chosen to build a nation and forge a common identity. Now let's sail over to the Philippines, an archipelago with over 180 languages, almost all belonging to the Austronesian family. The national language Filipino is based on Tagalog, which is spoken in the capital, Manila, and its surrounding areas. While about 28 million people speak Tagalog as their first language, Filipino is understood by around 45 million. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Other major languages include Cebuano with 27 million speakers and Ilocano with 10 million. Centuries of colonization have left their mark, with Spanish and English words weaving their way into the local languages. This has created a vibrant multilingual society. It's common for Filipinos to speak a regional language at home, use Filipino for national communication, and switch to English for business and education. The Philippines is a fantastic example of linguistic diversity coexisting with successful multilingualism. However, as Filipino and English gain prominence, many of the smaller indigenous languages are facing the threat of extinction. From Southeast Asia, our journey takes us into the vast expanse of the Pacific to the Polynesian Triangle. This huge area, stretching from Hawaii to New Zealand to Easter Island, is home to the Polynesian languages. You've probably heard of some of them: Hawaiian, Māori, Samoan, Tongan, and Tahitian. What's amazing is that despite the immense distances separating these islands, the languages are remarkably similar. A Maori speaker from New Zealand and a Hawaiian speaker could likely recognize many shared words. That's because their languages only split from a common ancestor about 2,000 years ago. The Polynesians were unrivaled navigators, and as they settled each new island, their language evolved in isolation. Today, nearly all Polynesian languages are endangered. Hawaiian was brought back from the brink of extinction, while Maori is being revitalized with strong community efforts. But many others, like Rapa Nui on Easter Island, are fighting for survival against the pressures of colonization and globalization. If you're looking for the most linguistically diverse place on the planet, look no further than Papua New Guinea. This nation is a linguistic marvel, with over 800 languages spoken by just 9 million people. About half of these languages are Austronesian, found along the coasts and on the islands. The other half are Papuan languages, spoken in the rugged highlands and belonging to several unrelated language families. How did this happen? The answer is geography. The extreme isolation created by towering mountains and dense rainforests allowed communities to develop in complete seclusion for thousands of years. In some cases, villages just 20 miles apart speak languages that are completely unintelligible to one another. Some languages have only a few hundred speakers left. This incredible diversity is both a cultural treasure and a practical challenge. To govern a nation with 800 languages, Papua New Guinea uses English, Tok Pisin, and Hiri Motu as official languages. It's a living laboratory of linguistic evolution. Let's take a detour all the way to Africa, to the island of Madagascar. The language spoken here by 18 million people is Malagasy, and here's the twist: it's an Austronesian language. Its closest relatives are spoken over 4,000 miles away in Borneo, Southeast Asia. How is this possible? Sometime between 500 and 1500 CE, intrepid Austronesian sailors from Borneo crossed the entire Indian Ocean and settled on the uninhabited island of Madagascar. It's a journey that still baffles historians. They brought their language with them, which over time mixed with influences from Bantu-speaking Africans and Arab traders who arrived later. The result is modern Malagasy, a language with Austronesian grammar and vocabulary at its core. but sprinkled with loan words from Bantu and Arabic. It stands as the only Austronesian language in Africa, a linguistic anomaly that serves as a testament to the incredible seafaring skills of ancient peoples. Today, Malagasy is the strong, vibrant national language of Madagascar. The isolation of the Pacific Islands acted like a series of natural laboratories for language. Each island, or even each valley, became a petri dish where a unique linguistic culture could evolve. On large, rugged islands like New Guinea, this resulted in hundreds of distinct languages. On smaller, more isolated atolls, a single unique language might develop over centuries. This creates a beautiful mosaic of diversity, but it also creates extreme vulnerability. Many island languages are spoken by very small populations, sometimes only a few hundred people. A single natural disaster like a tsunami or economic pressures that force people to migrate can wipe out an entire language community in an instant. As younger generations leave their home islands for education and jobs in cities, the languages are often left behind. And now climate change poses an existential threat. As sea levels rise, entire island nations could disappear, forcing their populations to evacuate. What happens to a language when its homeland is underwater? But it's not all bad news. Let's look at the incredible story of the Hawaiian language renaissance. After the US annexed Hawaii, the Hawaiian language was banned in schools in 1896. By the 1980s, it was on the verge of extinction, with only about 2,000 native speakers left, most of them elderly. It seemed like the end. But then a passionate group of activists decided to fight back. In 1984, they opened the first Punana Leo, or language nest, a preschool where children were taught entirely in Hawaiian. The idea caught on. Today, there are dozens of Hawaiian immersion schools, and a new generation of thousands of children is growing up speaking Hawaiian fluently. The language is thriving in media, music, and at the university level. It's perhaps the world's most successful story of language revitalization, proving that with community commitment and educational support, a language can be brought back from the brink. The Hawaiian Renaissance is a beacon of hope for endangered languages everywhere. In the end, the story of the Austronesian languages teaches us a powerful lesson. Oceans don't divide people, they connect them. For thousands of years, ancient voyagers crossed vast stretches of water, creating a web of cultural and linguistic connections. Today, modern technology is rebuilding those bridges. Social media allows Māori speakers in New Zealand and Hawaiian speakers to share resources and practice their languages together. A single word can tell this whole story. The word for two, which sounds like rua, lua, or dua, can be heard from Madagascar all the way to Hawaii, a linguistic thread tying half the world together. These languages are a monument to human courage and creativity. Did you know there are languages where the alphabet you use is a political statement? Welcome to the complex world of Slavic languages, spoken by over 300 million people from Prague to the Pacific. This family includes giants like Russian, Polish, and Ukrainian, but also many others like Czech, Serbian, and Bulgarian. They all trace back to a single ancestor, Proto-Slavic, spoken about 1,500 years ago. Despite being related to English and French, Slavic languages have their own unique flavor, famous for complex grammar with multiple cases and genders. What's amazing is their partial intelligibility. A Czech speaker can often get the gist of what a Slovak is saying. To understand these languages is to unlock the history of Eastern Europe, the spread of Orthodox Christianity, and the long shadow of Soviet influence. Let's rewind to around 500 CE, in the area of modern-day Poland, Belarus, and Ukraine. This is where Proto-Slavic was born. As Slavic tribes began one of the greatest migrations in early medieval Europe, their language split into three branches. The East Slavs pushed into what would become Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. The West Slavs stayed put in Central Europe, giving rise to Polish, Czech, and Slovak. And the South Slavs ventured into the Balkans, where their speech evolved into languages like Serbo-Croatian and Bulgarian. This massive expansion filled the power vacuum left by fading empires, completely redrawing the linguistic map of the continent. Today, the legacy of that migration is clear. Slavic languages dominate a vast territory, a testament to the journey of these ancient tribes. Now, why do some Slavic languages use the familiar Latin alphabet, while others use the Cyrillic script? The answer lies in a 1,000-year-old religious and political divide. Back in 863 CE, two Byzantine missionaries, Cyril and Methodius, created a new script to translate the Bible into a Slavic language. This script evolved into what we now call Cyrillic, named after Cyril. Naturally, Orthodox Christian Slavs, like Russians, Bulgarians, and Serbs, adopted it. Meanwhile, Catholic Slavs, such as the Poles, Czechs, and Croats, stuck with the Latin alphabet used by Rome. This created a deep cultural split. Even today, the choice of script is a powerful symbol of identity. In Ukraine, for instance, there have been discussions about switching to the Latin alphabet to create more distance from Russia, proving that for many, an alphabet is much more than just letters. Within the Slavic family, one language stands out for its sheer size and influence: Russian. As the 8th most spoken language in the world, its spread was fueled by centuries of imperial expansion, from Siberia to Central Asia. The Soviet Union then took this to another level, making Russian the mandatory language of government, education, and opportunity for nearly 300 million people across 15 republics. This policy of Russification often came at the expense of local languages. When the USSR collapsed in 1991, newly independent nations had to decide the future of their languages. While some, like Ukraine, worked hard to revive their national tongues, others, like Kazakhstan, kept Russian in a prominent role. This shows how political power can create a linguistic dominance that outlives the empires that built it. Let's head west to Poland and the Czech Republic. Polish, with 45 million speakers, is the largest of the West Slavic languages. It's famous for its tongue-twisting consonant clusters. Just try saying szczęście, which means happiness. Despite Poland being literally wiped off the map for 123 years, the Polish language was a lifeline that kept the national identity alive. Nearby you have Czech, spoken by about 10 million people. It's so similar to Slovak that speakers can understand each other with ease. The Czech language has a rich literary and cultural heritage, with famous figures like the writer Franz Kafka and composer Bedřich Smetana, helping to put it on the world stage. Today, both Polish and Czech are thriving, a testament to the resilience and pride of their people. Here's a linguistic puzzle for you. Is Serbo-Croatian one language or four? Linguistically speaking, Serbian, Croatian, Bosnian, and Montenegrin are basically the same. Speakers can understand each other perfectly, with only minor differences in vocabulary. But politically, it's a different story. Back when Yugoslavia was a single country, Serbo-Croatian was its official language. After the violent breakup of the country in the 1990s, the new nations each declared their own separate language, to forge their own national identities. So now Serbia has Serbian, Croatia has Croatian, and so on. It's a classic example of how politics can literally create languages. What linguists see as one language with different standard forms is, on the ground, 4 distinct national symbols. It is a powerful reminder that language is just as much about identity as it is about grammar. Now let's talk about Ukrainian and Russian. While they are closely related East Slavic languages, they are definitely not the same. Think of them as being like Spanish and Portuguese. A Ukrainian speaker can often understand Russian, but it takes effort. For centuries, the Russian Empire and later the Soviet Union suppressed Ukrainian, dismissing it as a peasant dialect. But after Ukraine gained independence in 1991, the nation began a massive effort to promote its own language in schools and government. This created a cultural fault line, with the west of the country being largely Ukrainian-speaking and the east more Russian-speaking. This linguistic divide has been a major factor in the region's recent conflicts. For Ukraine, promoting its language isn't just about culture. It's a declaration of national sovereignty and independence. Have you ever wished Slavic grammar was a bit simpler? Well, you should check out Bulgarian. It's unique because it lost the complex case system that other Slavic languages, like Russian and Polish, are famous for. Instead of changing the endings of nouns, Bulgarian uses prepositions much like English does. Why the change? Either centuries of contact with Greek and Turkish, languages with simpler grammar, influenced Bulgarian to simplify its own. It even developed a definite article, the book, for example, which is very unusual for a Slavic language. These changes make Bulgarian a bit of an outlier in its family, but they also show how languages are constantly evolving. They aren't static museum pieces. They adapt and change based on the people they come into contact with over time. While languages like Russian and Polish are thriving, some of their smaller cousins are in danger of disappearing. In northern Poland, the Kashubian language is spoken by only about 100,000 people, most of whom are elderly. In Germany, the Sorbian languages have just 30,000 speakers left. These minority languages are struggling against the dominance of Polish and German. Young people often switch to the majority language for better job prospects, leaving their ancestral tongue behind. Although there are some government efforts to support them with bilingual schools and regional status, it's often not enough. The potential loss of these languages isn't just a linguistic tragedy, it's the loss of unique cultures and histories. Their survival is a battle for the very diversity of the Slavic world. So, what does the future hold for Slavic languages? It's a mixed bag. Big languages like Russian and Polish are secure, backed by large populations and national support. But smaller languages, especially in the former Soviet sphere, face pressure not just from Russian, but also from English. Among young educated Slavs, code switching with English is becoming common. While language purists worry about English loanwords, borrowing is a natural part of any language's life. In the north, Indo-Aryan languages reign, but travel south, and you'll enter a completely different world, the world of Dravidian languages. This ancient family, with no proven connection to the Indo-European languages of the north, is spoken by about 250 million people. Languages like Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam are not just dialects. They are distinct tongues with their own unique scripts, complex grammar, and incredibly rich literary traditions stretching back thousands of years. These were the languages of India long before Indo-Aryan speakers arrived 3,500 years ago. Once likely spoken across a much wider area, they were gradually pushed south, where they now flourish. To understand the Dravidian languages is to understand India's deep pre-Aryan heritage and the incredible linguistic diversity that makes it one of the most fascinating places on Earth. 4 of these languages are absolute giants, each with over 30 million speakers. Telugu leads the pack with around 85 million speakers in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, making it India's 3rd largest language. Then there's Tamil, with 75 million speakers in Tamil Nadu, and it even holds official status in Sri Lanka and Singapore. Kannada is spoken by 45 million people in Karnataka, and Malayalam by 38 million in Kerala. Each of these 4 has its own unique script derived from the ancient Brahmi script and enjoys official status in its home state. Their cultural influence is massive, with vibrant film industries like Tollywood and Collywood being major forces. The Indian government has even recognized them as classical languages, a nod to their ancient literary traditions. Despite their differences, clear grammatical similarities prove they all descend from a common ancestor, Proto-Dravidian, spoken perhaps 4,500 years ago. Among these giants, Tamil is the flagship, the classical tongue. It boasts the oldest literature and perhaps the strongest cultural identity. Tamil speakers are fiercely proud of their language's age and purity, often resisting loanwords from Sanskrit, which sets it apart from its Dravidian cousins. The beautiful, rounded Tamil script is instantly recognizable. But its true treasure is its literature, especially the Sangam poetry. Dating from 300 BCE to 300 CE, a stunning collection of poems on love, war, and ethics. This strong linguistic identity isn't just confined to India. The Tamil diaspora in places like Malaysia, Singapore, and Canada often preserves the language with incredible dedication. This deep connection between language and identity has even had major political consequences, as seen in the Tamil nationalist movement in Sri Lanka. In Tamil culture, language and identity are truly inseparable. Now let's talk about Telugu and Kannada. With 85 million speakers, Telugu is the largest Dravidian language. It's famously known as the Italian of the East for its beautiful, vowel-heavy and melodious sound. Its literary tradition goes back 1,000 years, and its film industry, Tollywood, is one of the biggest in India. Unlike the purist approach of Tamil, Telugu has absorbed a significant amount of vocabulary from Sanskrit. Similarly, Kannada, with 45 million speakers in Karnataka, has an ancient literary history, with inscriptions dating back to the 5th century. Its writers have earned numerous national literary awards. Like Telugu, Kannada also embraced Sanskrit's influence, especially in its formal and literary forms. These 2 languages perfectly illustrate how language families can interact and borrow from each other, creating rich hybrid structures that blend Dravidian grammar with Indo-Aryan vocabulary. Malayalam, spoken in the beautiful state of Kerala, is the youngest of the 4 major Dravidian languages. It actually split from Tamil only about 1,000 years ago. Because of this recent divergence, Malayalam and Tamil speakers can often understand bits of each other's languages. Despite being the youngest, it boasts the highest literacy rate of any major Indian language at an incredible 93%. This highly educated population has cultivated a strong and respected literary culture. What's fascinating about Malayalam is its massive borrowing from Sanskrit. Some estimate that up to 80% of its formal vocabulary is Sanskrit-derived, making it a true hybrid of Dravidian grammar and an Indo-Aryan lexicon. Its script is also quite complex, with many combined consonant characters. Both its cinema and literature are held in high regard across India. Beyond the Big Four, there are about 20 smaller Dravidian languages, each with a unique story. You have Tulu on the Karnataka coast with 2 million speakers, and Gondi in central India with 3 million. Then there's the mystery of Brahui, a Dravidian language spoken in Pakistan, 1,000 miles away from its linguistic relatives. How did it get there? It's a puzzle that suggests Dravidian languages once covered a much larger territory. Sadly, many of these smaller languages are endangered. As younger generations shift to more dominant regional languages or Hindi, languages like Gondi are under threat. Many lack official status or writing systems, surviving only in rural and tribal communities. With each language that vanishes, we lose a unique piece of human heritage and the cultural identity tied to it. For 3,500 years, Dravidian and Indo-Aryan languages have lived side by side, and they've definitely influenced each other. Sanskrit and Hindi borrowed Dravidian words, especially for plants, animals, and cultural concepts unique to South India. In return, Dravidian languages, especially Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam, borrowed heavily from Sanskrit for formal and religious contexts. This created a situation called diglossia, where the formal written language is heavily Sanskritic, while the everyday spoken language is more purely Dravidian. Some linguists even argue that Indo-Aryan languages adopted grammatical features from Dravidian, like retroflex consonants, that D or T sound made by curling your tongue back. This feature is common in Dravidian, but rare in other Indo-European languages, suggesting deep, prolonged contact and bilingualism between the two groups. The linguistic line between North and South India isn't a sharp wall, but a gradient of mutual influence. One of the most visually stunning aspects of these languages is their scripts. Each of the 4 major Dravidian languages has its own writing system, all descended from the ancient Brahmi script. The Tamil script is particularly distinctive with its rounded, flowing letters. Telugu and Kannada scripts look quite similar to each other, full of circles and loops. The Malayalam script is known for its complexity, with many special characters for combined consonants. While beautiful, learning these scripts can be a challenge. For a long time, even typing them was difficult. But thanks to Unicode and modern digital fonts, these scripts are now thriving online. Social media in Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam is incredibly vibrant, with young people using their native scripts naturally. It is a perfect example of how ancient traditions can adapt and find a new home in the digital age. This strong linguistic identity has also played a huge role in politics. When India gained independence in 1947, a heated debate began over a national language. Proponents of Hindi wanted it to be the sole official language for the entire country. This did not sit well with Dravidian speakers, especially the Tamils. They saw the imposition of Hindi, an Indo-Aryan language, as a form of linguistic imperialism. Massive protests erupted, particularly in Tamil Nadu. The government eventually compromised. Hindi and English would be the official languages of the central government, but states were free to use their own regional languages for official purposes. To this day, Tamil Nadu strongly resists what it sees as Hindi imposition. In India, language is never just about communication. It's about political power, cultural identity, and regional pride. So what does the future hold for Dravidian languages? The 4 major ones are likely secure. They have large populations, official status, and vibrant media industries to sustain them. But they face challenges. English is increasingly the language of higher education and business. The massive popularity of Bollywood spreads Hindi across the nation. And as we discussed, smaller tribal languages are fighting for survival. The big question is whether Dravidian languages can maintain their relevance in modern fields like science and technology, or if they'll be confined to the home and cultural events. The choices made today in education, policy, and media will determine whether these ancient and beautiful languages continue to thrive for generations to come. Have you ever heard a language that sounds like nothing else on Earth? Today we're diving into two of the biggest linguistic mysteries, Japanese and Korean. With over 125 million speakers in Japan and 77 million on the Korean peninsula and beyond, these aren't small obscure tongues, they're giants. And yet they are what linguists call language isolates. They have no proven relatives. Despite being neighbors and sharing centuries of history, there's no solid proof they're related to each other, or even to Chinese, their massive neighbor. Sure, they borrowed a ton of vocabulary, and even their writing systems from China, but their core grammar is a completely different world. Japanese and Korean are agglutinative languages, meaning they stick bits and pieces onto words to build meaning. Chinese is isolating. Words are like individual Lego blocks that don't change. This fundamental difference makes them stand out. So, where did they come from? Are they truly alone, or are their family ties just too ancient for us to see? Let's start with Japanese. Its grammar is a real head-turner. English speakers say I eat rice, but in Japanese the verb goes last. I rice eat. Watashi wa gohan o tabemasu. The sentence is held together by little words called particles. Wa points out the topic, ga marks the subject, and o signals the direct object. It's like a grammatical GPS for your sentence. And get this, no articles like a or the, no plurals, and no specific future tense. You have to rely on context to figure out if I go means now, later, or yesterday. But the real complexity lies in its honorific system. How you speak depends entirely on who you're talking to, your boss, your friend, or a junior colleague. It's a language that has social hierarchy baked right into its verbs and nouns. So while it might seem simple on the surface, mastering Japanese means becoming a master of social cues. Now, how do you even write Japanese? Well, you use not one, not two, but 3 different writing systems all at the same time. It's a wild ride. First, you have kanji, which are the characters borrowed from Chinese. There are thousands of them, and each one can have multiple pronunciations depending on the context. Talk about a memory challenge. Then there's hiragana, a beautiful curvy script where each of the 46 characters represents a syllable. It's used for native Japanese words and all the grammatical bits and pieces. Finally, there's katakana. It has the same sounds as hiragana, but looks sharper and more angular. Katakana is the cool kid, used for foreign loanwords, brand names, and for adding emphasis like italics. So a single sentence can be a mashup of all 3. It's one of the most complex writing systems in the world, a perfect reflection of Japan's history of borrowing from China while forging its own unique path. Moving over to the Korean peninsula, we find a language that shares some striking similarities with Japanese, like that subject-object-verb-word order and its agglutinative nature. But most linguists think this is due to long-term contact, not a shared family tree. Korean takes the politeness game to another level, with an even more intricate honorific system than Japanese. We're talking about 7 distinct levels of formality. The way you speak to your parents is completely different from how you speak to a stranger. Korean also has something called evidentiality. You have to grammatically signal how you know something. Did you see it with your own eyes? Did someone tell you? Are you just taking a wild guess? It's all encoded in the language. The pronunciation can be tricky for English speakers with sounds that don't quite match up. But here's the silver lining. Korean grammar is incredibly regular. Once you learn a pattern, it sticks. The real genius of the Korean language, though, is its writing system, Hangul. It's widely hailed as one of the most scientific alphabets ever created. Back in 1443, King Sejong the Great and his scholars invented it specifically to boost literacy. Before Hangul, Koreans struggled with Chinese characters, which just didn't fit their language well. Hangul is brilliant in its simplicity. It has 24 basic letters, and the shapes of the consonants actually mimic the shape your mouth and tongue make when you produce that sound. How cool is that? The vowels are based on a philosophy of sky, earth, and humanity. These letters are then grouped into syllable blocks, which gives the text a look that's reminiscent of Chinese characters. It's so logical that most people can learn the basics in just a few hours. UNESCO even celebrates Hangul Day. It's a masterpiece of design that helped Korea forge a strong, literate, and distinct cultural identity. Now, you can't talk about Japanese or Korean without talking about China's immense influence. For over 150 years, China was the cultural and political powerhouse of East Asia. Its influence spread far and wide, and both Japan and Korea absorbed it like sponges. As a result, a huge chunk of their vocabulary, we're talking over 60%, actually comes from Chinese. This creates different layers in the languages. In Japanese, you have native words, Chinese-derived words, and modern Western loanwords. In Korean, you have native Korean words and Sino-Korean words. You'll often find that formal or academic language is full of these Chinese borrowings, while casual, everyday speech uses more native words. Even though Korea largely moved away from Chinese characters in the 20th century, Japan still uses them every day. This just goes to show that languages can borrow heavily from one another without actually being related. Japanese and Korean aren't the only linguistic loners out there. The world is dotted with language isolates. In Europe, you have Basque, spoken in parts of Spain and France. It's a complete outlier, a remnant from before the Indo-European languages swept across the continent. In northern Japan, the Ainu language is critically endangered, with just a handful of elderly speakers left. Even ancient Sumerian, the language of Mesopotamia, was an isolate, totally unrelated to the Semitic languages spoken around it. This raises a fascinating question. Are these languages truly alone, or have their relatives just vanished over time? Some linguists have proposed controversial macro-families trying to link isolates together, but there's no consensus. These isolates are living fossils, reminders that the neat family trees we draw for languages don't tell the whole story. And that much of our linguistic history is lost forever. For a while, there was a theory that tried to group Japanese and Korean with languages like Mongolian and Turkish into a big happy family called Altaic. The idea was based on some shared features, like adding suffixes to words, having vowel harmony, and putting the verb at the end of the sentence. It seemed plausible. However, today, most linguists have rejected the Altaic hypothesis. They argue that these similarities aren't proof of a common ancestor. Instead, they're likely aerial features, traits that spread between neighboring languages through centuries of contact, like borrowing a cup of sugar, but for grammar. Think of it as a Sprachbund, or a linguistic area where unrelated languages start to look a little like each other. The whole Altaic debate is a great lesson in linguistics. Just because two languages look similar on the surface doesn't mean they are related. For both Japan and Korea, language is deeply intertwined with national identity. In Japan, you'll see movements trying to purify the language by resisting English loanwords, though pop culture still brings them in. In Korea, there are ongoing debates about whether to bring back the teaching of Chinese characters in schools. Are they a vital part of their heritage or a relic of the past? This connection to identity is also shaped by painful history. During its colonial rule from 1910 to 1945, Japan forced Koreans to speak Japanese, an act of linguistic imperialism that left deep scars. Today, protecting the Korean language is still a politically sensitive topic. Both nations use their unique languages as a pillar of their national identity and a tool of soft power, promoting them worldwide through cultural institutes. Language isn't just how they talk, it's who they are. So what does the future hold for Japanese and Korean? They're on very different paths. Japan's population is shrinking, which means fewer native speakers. But at the same time, the global popularity of anime, manga, and video games has millions of people studying Japanese. On the other hand, Korean is exploding in popularity thanks to the Hallyu wave of K-pop and K-dramas. The number of Korean language learners has skyrocketed, actively supported by the South Korean government. But both face the ever-present dominance of English in global business and tech. Will Japanese and Korean grow into truly global languages, or will they remain primarily national treasures? Their futures will be shaped by culture, economics, and policy. But for now, they remain two of the world's most fascinating linguistic mysteries. What happens when people who don't speak each other's languages have to communicate? They get creative. They invent pidgins, simple mash-up languages with basic grammar and a small vocabulary, just enough to get by for things like trade or work. A pidgin isn't anyone's native tongue. But then something amazing happens. When children grow up hearing a pidgin, their brains naturally add complexity, expand the vocabulary, and build a real, structured system. This new, fully formed language is called a creole. The process, creolization, is how dozens of languages have been born around the world. It's a powerful testament to our innate ability for language. Watching a pidgin become a creole is like watching the birth of a language in real time, a showcase of human linguistic resilience and creativity. Thanks to its colonial past, English is the parent of many Creole languages. Take Jamaican patois, a blend of English and West African languages, or Gullah Geechee, spoken on the sea islands of South Carolina and Georgia, which beautifully preserves African linguistic roots. In Hawaii, plantation workers from China, Japan, the Philippines, and Portugal mixed their languages with English, creating Hawaiian pidgin. Over in Papua New Guinea, Tok Pisin, born from an English pidgin, is now an official language with 4 million speakers. These aren't broken English. They are complete languages with their own grammar, literature, and cultural identity. Sadly, many Creole speakers face discrimination, their languages dismissed as incorrect. This attitude is a leftover of colonialism and has no basis in linguistic fact. French colonialism also sparked a family of Creoles across the globe. Haitian Creole, spoken by 11 million people, is one of Haiti's official languages, born from the contact between French colonizers and enslaved West Africans. While most Haitians speak Creole, French still holds a certain prestige. In the United States, Louisiana Creole is now endangered, spoken mainly by a few thousand elders. What's fascinating is that Creoles in places as far apart as Martinique and the Seychelles share similar structures. They often simplify grammar, drop grammatical gender, and use special words before verbs to mark tense, all while incorporating grammatical patterns from African languages. It's a striking example of how the human mind consistently builds language in similar ways, no matter the circumstances. The Portuguese and Spanish empires also left a legacy of Creole languages. In the Caribbean, Papiamento mixes Portuguese and Spanish with African and indigenous Arawak languages and is spoken by about 300,000 people in Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao. In Africa, Cape Verdean Creole has official status, while Guinea-Bissau Creole is the common language for many. Even in Asia, you can find remnants, like the nearly extinct Macanese Creole in Macau. A rare Spanish-based Creole is Chavacano in the Philippines, with 1 million speakers blending Spanish with local languages. These languages show how European tongues were transformed in colonial settings. They borrowed words, yes, but their grammar and structure were often shaped by African and Asian languages, reflecting the creativity of colonized peoples who forged entirely new ways of speaking. Creole languages often exist on a spectrum with the language they borrowed their words from. In Jamaica, for instance, there's a range from deep patois, which is hard for an English speaker to understand, to varieties that sound much closer to standard English. Speakers can fluently switch along this post-Creole continuum, using deep patois with friends and family, and a more standard form in school or at work. This creates social complexity. Those who master the standard form often have more prestige and opportunities, while speakers of deep Creole can face discrimination. Many school systems even treat Creole as simply a set of errors to be corrected, but linguists know better. Creoles are legitimate, rule-governed languages. This continuum challenges the idea of languages as separate boxes and shows how deeply intertwined language is with power and society. Why do Creoles from different parts of the world with different parent languages look so similar? Linguist Derek Bickerton proposed the language bioprogram hypothesis. He argued that all humans are born with an innate blueprint for language, a sort of universal grammar. When children learning a pidgin get messy, inconsistent input, this internal blueprint kicks in, guiding them to create similar grammatical solutions. Common features pop up everywhere: specific ways to mark tense, similar question structures, and consistent rules for articles like a and the. Bickerton believed Creoles are the clearest evidence we have for this innate language ability. While not every linguist agrees on the details, it is undeniable that Creoles offer a unique window into the human mind and how we acquire language. Beyond Creoles, there's another fascinating category: mixed languages. These aren't simplified like pidgins. Instead, they deliberately combine distinct pieces from two different languages into one stable system. A classic example is Michif, spoken by the Métis people in Canada. It uses verb structures from the Cree language and noun structures from French, often in the very same sentence. Another is Media Lengua in Ecuador, which pairs Quechua grammar with Spanish words. These languages typically arise in bilingual communities with a strong mixed identity. They challenge our neat categories. Is Michif a type of Cree or a type of French? It's neither. It's its own language, proving that language creation is a powerful tool for expressing identity, not just for communication. This amazing process of language creation isn't just for spoken words. It happens with signed languages too. The story of Nicaraguan Sign Language is one of the most incredible examples in modern linguistics. Before the 1970s, there was no single sign language in Nicaragua. Deaf individuals used their own simple home signs with their families. But when the first school for the deaf opened in 1977, these children came together. They started pooling their home signs, and within a single generation, they created a brand new, complex, and fully grammatical language from scratch. Linguists were there to watch it happen in real time. It was creolization in action, proving that the human brain is hardwired to create language, whether through sound or sight. Creole languages are often at the center of political and cultural struggles. They are frequently dismissed as dialects, broken forms, or just plain bad language by people who speak the historically dominant European language. This isn't a linguistic judgment. It's a reflection of prejudice and colonial history. In Haiti, for example, French remains the language of power in government and education, even though most citizens only speak Haitian Creole. This creates huge barriers. Activists worldwide are fighting for recognition, demanding official status, education, and media in Creole languages, and there has been progress. Haiti and the Seychelles have made their Creoles official. But the fight is far from over. This struggle is about more than just words. It's about power, identity, and decolonization. So a new language is still being born today, absolutely. Look at Spanglish in the US, Hinglish in India, or Chinglish in China. Right now they might just be code mixing. But if a community starts using these mixed forms consistently and passes them down to their children, they could stabilize into new languages. All over the world, young people in cities are creating new slang and new ways of talking that blend local languages with English. Are these the seeds of new languages? Only time will tell. Language creation is not ancient history. It's a living, breathing process. It's happening right now, showing us that language is always evolving, always reflecting our creativity and our social needs. Did you know that right now a language dies somewhere in the world about every 2 weeks? Of the 7,000 languages spoken today, nearly half are endangered. Linguists are predicting that by the end of this century, up to 90% of the world's languages could be extinct. This isn't just a number, it's a cultural catastrophe on a scale we've never seen before. Globalization, economic pressures, and the dominance of a few major languages are pushing thousands of unique human voices towards silence. Languages that have survived for millennia are now vanishing within a single generation. With each one that disappears, we lose unique knowledge, culture, and entire ways of seeing the world. It's like a mass extinction event, but for human thought. The good news: unlike biological extinction, we can actually do something about it. So, what makes a language endangered? UNESCO has a scale. A safe language is one kids are learning and using everywhere. But then it gets serious. Vulnerable languages are mostly used at home. Definitely endangered means kids aren't learning it anymore. Severely endangered means only the older adults speak it. And critically endangered means only a few very elderly people are left. When that last speaker passes away, the language is gone forever. Some languages have only 1 or 2 speakers left on the entire planet. Linguists are in a race against time to document them, but writing things down isn't the same as saving them. A documented language is like a butterfly pinned in a display case. It's preserved, but it's no longer alive. Why do languages die? It's a mix of powerful forces. The biggest one is economic pressure. To get a good job or education, you often need to speak a dominant language. So parents wanting the best for their kids stop teaching them their heritage language. Governments sometimes make it worse by forcing everyone to use one language in schools and official business. There's also cultural stigma. Minority languages can be portrayed as backward or useless, and people start to feel ashamed of speaking their own tongue. Then there's migration. When young people move to big cities for work, they lose touch with the communities that kept their language alive. And with TV, movies, and the internet, all in major languages, smaller languages start to seem irrelevant. A language needs a place to live, and when all those places are taken over, it has nowhere left to go. Let's look at some real stories. Dalmatian, a Romance language from Croatia, went extinct in 1898 when its last speaker, Tuone Udina, died in an accident. Ubykh, a language from the Caucasus region, died with its last fluent speaker, Tevfik Esenç, in 1992. More recently, the Ayak language of Alaska vanished in 2008 with the passing of Marie Smith Jones. She spent her final years desperately trying to preserve her language, a world of knowledge only she held. These aren't just statistics, they're personal tragedies. Imagine being the last person on earth who can speak your mother tongue, carrying an entire culture inside you with no one to share it with. It's a profound and lonely burden. When a language dies, what do we actually lose? It's so much more than just words. We lose entire systems of knowledge. Many indigenous languages hold incredibly detailed ecological wisdom about plants, animals, and natural cycles that has been gathered over thousands of years. We lose linguistic diversity, the very thing that helps us understand how the human mind works. Some languages have grammatical features that exist nowhere else on Earth. We lose stories, songs, and oral traditions. We lose unique ways of seeing the world, different ways of thinking about time, space, and relationships. For the speakers themselves, it's a loss of identity, a severing of the connection to their ancestors and their land. We mourn the loss of animal species, and we should. But this linguistic extinction is just as catastrophic for humanity. In this race against time, linguists and communities are working hard to document endangered languages. With modern tech, we can make high-quality audio and video recordings of the last speakers. We can build dictionaries, write grammars, and create digital archives to preserve everything we can. This documentation is vital. It's much better than losing everything. But let's be clear, documentation isn't salvation. It creates a museum of a language, not a living one. Recordings can't create new words, tell new jokes, or adapt to a changing world. They freeze a language at its moment of death. True preservation means revitalization, creating new generations of speakers. And that's a much bigger challenge. It's the difference between recording a language's last breath and giving it the air it needs to live again. But there is hope. Some languages have been brought back from the brink. Hebrew is the most famous example. It was unspoken for nearly 2,000 years and is now a thriving national language. In the 1980s, Hawaiian had fewer than 2,000 speakers. Today, thanks to immersion schools, a new generation is growing up speaking it fluently. The Māori language in New Zealand and Welsh in the UK have also seen incredible comebacks thanks to community dedication and government support. Even Cornish, a language in England that was declared extinct, has been revived and now has hundreds of speakers. These successes prove that language death is not inevitable. It takes immense effort, resources, and a deep community desire. But it is possible to turn the tide. The digital age offers some amazing new tools for this fight. Social media can connect scattered speakers across the globe. We can build online dictionaries, create language learning apps, and use platforms like YouTube to share content in any language, no matter how small its speaker base. Texting and messaging in a minority language give it a foothold in the modern world. This digital presence helps make a language feel relevant and cool again. But technology isn't a magic wand. Many endangered language communities lack reliable internet or the technical skills needed to use these tools. Technology can help, but it can never replace the human commitment and person-to-person connection needed to pass a language from one generation to the next. This all leads to a bigger question. Should we protect languages as a fundamental human right? An international declaration says yes, arguing that everyone has the right to use their language, get an education in it, and have it officially recognized. But this isn't legally binding, and many countries actively suppress minority languages, often in the name of national unity or economic progress. The debate pits cultural preservation against pragmatism. But for many, forcing people to abandon their language is a form of cultural violence. Advocating for linguistic rights means pushing for bilingual education, official support, and an end to the discrimination that makes people feel they have to choose between their heritage and their future. So, can we save the world's languages? Honestly, many of the 3,500 endangered languages will likely be lost. The global forces are just too strong. But we don't have to lose all of them. We can save hundreds if communities are determined and get the support they need. The real challenge is changing attitudes. We need to see these languages not just as historical relics, but as living, valuable, and modern. Young people need to see a future in their language, jobs, media, and social prestige. It's a huge undertaking, but every single language we save is a victory for human diversity. Did you know that over half the world's population speaks more than one language? That's right. For most of humanity, being multilingual isn't a special talent. It's just normal life. In many parts of Africa and Asia, speaking 3 or 4 languages is completely ordinary. People might use one language at home, another for school, a different one at the market, and yet another for religious services. It's a necessity born from linguistic diversity. The idea that one person equals one language is actually a pretty modern and isolated concept, common in places like the United States or Japan. But even there, you'll find vibrant multilingual communities. Historically, our ancestors were always multilingual, trading and living with tribes who spoke different languages. So understanding that multilingualism is our natural state is the first step to unlocking the ease and incredible benefits of learning another language. Have you ever wondered how kids in multilingual families just pick up languages? It seems like magic, but it's all about exposure. A child with a French mother and a Spanish father can become a native speaker of both, as long as they hear and interact with each language enough. At first, they might mix words, which is totally normal. By age 4 or 5, they become expert code switchers, effortlessly speaking French to mom and Spanish to dad. This doesn't confuse them at all. In fact, being bilingual actually boosts their cognitive flexibility, giving them better problem-solving skills and attention control. The key isn't just passively hearing the language, it's active, meaningful interaction. So far from being a burden, growing up with multiple languages gives a child's brain a powerful head start. We all know children seem to soak up languages like sponges, while adults often struggle. Why is that? It comes down to something called the critical period hypothesis. This theory suggests there's a biological window for language learning that starts to close around puberty. Before that, learning is effortless and intuitive. Afterwards, it becomes a more conscious and difficult process. This is especially true for pronunciation. It's rare for an adult learner to achieve a perfect native-like accent. But here's the good news. Our ability to learn grammar and vocabulary never really disappears. The critical period isn't a hard cutoff, but a gradual shift. While a child's brain is primed for language, an adult brain has its own advantages. Better study habits, more life experience, and stronger motivation. So, age changes. How we learn, not if we can learn. So what does it take to learn a second language as you get older? Well, it's a mix of ingredients. Age plays a part, especially with pronunciation. Your motivation is huge. If you really want it, you'll progress faster. Immersing yourself in the language works wonders, far more than just sitting in a classroom. Your native language also matters. If you speak Spanish, learning Italian will be easier than if you're an English speaker tackling Arabic. Some people just have a natural flair for languages, but personality counts too. Outgoing people who aren't afraid to make mistakes often learn quicker than perfectionists. The secret sauce is comprehensible input, listening to or reading things just slightly above your level. And you have to practice by speaking and writing. Nothing beats interacting with native speakers. It's hard work, but combining study, practice, and real conversation is the path to success. Over the centuries, the way we teach languages has changed dramatically. For a long time, it was all about grammar translation, memorizing rules and translating texts. This made you great at reading, but not so much at speaking. Then came methods that focused on immersion and speaking from day one. We've had drill-based methods, and then a shift to what's called communicative language teaching, where the goal is just to get your message across, even if it's not perfect. Today, we're in an era of mixing and matching what works best, supported by amazing technology. We have apps for vocabulary, platforms to connect with native speakers, and even AI tutors. There's no single magic method. The real key is finding what works for you and your goals and then sticking with it consistently over time. If you've ever been around bilinguals, you've probably heard them code switch, flipping between languages mid-conversation or even mid-sentence. This isn't a sign of confusion. It's an incredibly sophisticated skill that shows a deep understanding of both languages and the social situation. People code switch for all sorts of reasons: to emphasize a point, to show they're part of a group, to express an idea that's just easier in one language, or to create a sense of closeness. Think of Spanglish or Hinglish. These aren't random mixtures, they follow their own grammatical rules. Far from being a linguistic flaw, linguists see code switching as a sign of advanced language mastery. It's not about being confused. It's about having a bigger, more flexible toolkit for communication. What's happening inside the brain of a multilingual person? It's fascinating. Brain scans show that when a bilingual person speaks one language, their brain is actually lighting up for both. It's constantly working to activate the right language and suppress the other one. This mental juggling act can sometimes make it a tiny bit slower to find a specific word, but it comes with a huge payoff. It strengthens the brain's executive functions, things like attention, switching between tasks, and ignoring distractions. This cognitive boost isn't just for language, it applies to all sorts of tasks. And here's an amazing fact: being bilingual can delay the onset of dementia by an average of 4 to 5 years. The brain doesn't have separate boxes for each language. It's one integrated, supercharged system. The way you speak says a lot about you, or at least that's what people assume. Your language and accent can signal your social class, education, and where you're from. In many societies, there's a standard or proper way to speak that's seen as prestigious, while other dialects or minority languages are often looked down upon. These judgments are purely social. Linguistically, all languages and dialects are equally complex and valid. But these attitudes have real-world consequences, affecting everything from job interviews to social acceptance. Many bilingual people are masters of navigating this, using a more formal variety of language at work and a relaxed one with friends. Your language becomes part of your identity. Changing these negative attitudes means challenging the social prejudices they're often based on. How should schools support students from different language backgrounds? There are a few approaches. The sink or swim model just drops them into mainstream classes, which often doesn't work. Some programs use the child's home language at first, but aim to replace it with the dominant one. But the most successful model is additive. Dual language programs aim to make all students bilingual, valuing both languages equally. Research is overwhelmingly clear on this. Children learn best when they first become literate in their mother tongue. Those skills then transfer easily to a second language. Forcing kids into a new language too early can actually hold them back. Creating truly effective multilingual education takes resources and political will, but the result is smarter, more culturally aware citizens. Have you ever wondered why you're probably watching this video in English, even if it's not your first language? Right now, about 380 million people speak English as their native tongue, but a staggering 1.5 billion more speak it as a second language. It's the go-to for international business, science, aviation, and entertainment. So how did a language from a small island conquer the globe? It's a tale of two empires. First, the British Empire, from the 17th to the 20th century, spread English across continents through colonization. Then, after World War II, America's economic and cultural might cemented English as the language of global capitalism and pop culture. English didn't win because it's simple or beautiful. It won because of power. Understanding its rise is to understand the story of empires and globalization. At its peak in the 1920s, the British Empire governed a quarter of the world's land and people, and wherever Britain went, English followed. In places like North America, Australia, and New Zealand, it often displaced indigenous languages. In India, with its hundreds of millions speaking dozens of languages, English became the language of administration. The same happened across Africa and the Caribbean. This wasn't just a political takeover, it was linguistic imperialism. English was pushed through schools, government, and the economy, while local languages were often suppressed. Even after gaining independence, many former colonies kept English as an official language. Why? It was often seen as a politically neutral bridge between different local groups and a practical tool for global communication. Britain's colonial legacy laid the foundation for English as a world language. After World War II, the torch passed to the United States, the new global superpower. American economic, military, and cultural power took English to even greater heights. Think about Hollywood movies, American TV shows, pop music, and later, the internet. Young people everywhere started watching American content, listening to American artists, and following American trends. Tech giants like Microsoft, Apple, and Google made English the default language of the digital world. Unlike the British, who often used force, American influence was soft power. People chose to learn English for the opportunities it offered, not because they were ordered to. This made its influence even more profound. English was no longer just an imperial language. It transformed into a neutral, global tool for success. Today, English serves as the world's lingua franca, a common tongue that lets people from different backgrounds communicate. A business person from Japan can close a deal with a partner from Brazil, all in English. International conferences, academic journals, even air traffic control, they all run on English. When people from different countries meet, it's the default language. This creates immense pressure on non-native speakers to learn it or risk being cut off from global opportunities. This dominance raises concerns. It creates a two-tiered world. Those who speak English have an advantage and those who don't are left behind. Native English speakers get a free pass. They benefit from this system without even trying, a linguistic privilege that often goes unnoticed. But English isn't just one single thing. There are hundreds of varieties spoken all over the world. We know about British, American, and Australian English, each with its own accent, words, and grammar. But there are also vibrant, unique versions spoken by hundreds of millions as a second language. Indian English, for example, is full of unique phrases and pronunciations influenced by Hindi and other local languages. Nigerian English borrows from Yoruba and Igbo. Singaporean English, or Singlish, is a fascinating mix of English, Malay, Tamil, and Chinese. These aren't broken English. They are legitimate, evolving varieties with their own rules. This raises a big question. Who owns English now? With non-native speakers outnumbering native speakers 3-1, maybe English no longer belongs to England, but to everyone who uses it. The global dominance of English has a huge impact on other languages. On one hand, languages borrow words from English all the time. Think le weekend in French or the thousands of English loanwords in Japanese. That's just normal language evolution. But there's a darker side. English's power can threaten the very survival of smaller languages. Why bother learning Icelandic or Welsh when English is everywhere? In many countries, parents are choosing to speak English to their children, hoping to give them a head start. This English-only mindset can accelerate the decline of minority languages. It also shapes how we think. When non-native speakers have to express themselves in English, they might lose nuances that only their own language can capture. It's a subtle form of influence, but a powerful one. Learning English is a massive global business, worth over $100 billion every year. Millions of people flock to language schools, hire private tutors, and buy online courses. Standardized tests like TOEFL and IELTS act as gatekeepers to universities and jobs, creating a hugely profitable testing industry. Some countries, like the Philippines, have even built economies around exporting English teachers. Native English speakers, meanwhile, can often find work teaching abroad with minimal qualifications. This whole industry reinforces English's dominance. It funnels billions of dollars into learning English instead of other languages, creating a cycle of economic dependency. For individuals, learning English is a path to opportunity, but on a global scale, it's a system that enriches English-speaking nations, but not everyone is happy about this. Some places are actively resisting. France has language laws to protect French in advertising and government, with the prestigious Académie Française fighting to keep English loanwords out. In Canada, Quebec fiercely protects its French identity. Countries like China, Spain, and France are also trying to promote their own languages internationally through cultural institutes, but it's an uphill battle against the sheer economic and cultural momentum of English. For many, Rejecting English means risking economic isolation. Resistance is often more symbolic than practical. For now, the dominance of English seems unshakable, short of a major shift in global power. So is English actually easy to learn? Well, yes and no. The grammar is simple in some ways. There's no grammatical gender like in French or Spanish, and verb endings are relatively straightforward. But then you hit the irregularities. The spelling is notoriously chaotic. Just think about though, through, and rough. Phrasal verbs like put up with can be a nightmare. And its vocabulary is gigantic, thanks to its Germanic roots combined with massive borrowing from French and Latin. Its pronunciation, with all its tricky vowel sounds, can be a real challenge. The reputation of English as easy might just be because it's everywhere. With so many learning resources and so much media, you get constant exposure, which makes any language easier to pick up. What does the future hold for English? It will likely remain the top global language for decades to come. The internet, American culture, and the simple fact that so many people already speak it create a self-reinforcing cycle. But history teaches us that nothing lasts forever. Latin was the dominant language of Europe for 1,000 years, and then it faded. Could Mandarin challenge English as China's global influence grows? It's possible, but English has a huge head start. A more likely scenario is a multilingual future where English remains dominant, but other languages like Mandarin and Spanish become major regional players. Or perhaps technology will change everything. Imagine real-time AI translation that removes language barriers completely. If that happens, every language could thrive. But for now, English continues to shape our world. Around the world, communities are refusing to let their languages die. They're fighting back through what we call language revitalization, a powerful effort to reverse decline and create new generations of speakers. This isn't just one single strategy, it's a whole toolkit. You've got immersion schools where kids learn entirely in their heritage language, master apprentice programs that pair fluent elders with young learners, and community classes for all ages. There are also massive documentation projects, new tech initiatives, and even political activism demanding recognition and resources. Some of these efforts succeed spectacularly. Others, despite incredible dedication, don't make it. It takes sustained commitment across generations, a lot of resources, and a supportive political climate. But communities persist because for them, language isn't just words. It's identity, it's culture, it's a direct line to their ancestors. Losing a language means losing a piece of who they are. The revival of Hebrew is probably the most dramatic linguistic comeback story in history. For nearly 2,000 years, Hebrew was a liturgical language used in religious texts and prayers, but not for everyday conversation. In the late 1800s, a man named Eliezer ben Yehuda decided to change that. He championed the revival of Hebrew, insisting on speaking only Hebrew at home. His son became the first native Hebrew speaker in 2 millennia. At first, people thought he was crazy. How could a dead language possibly live again? But Ben Yehuda and others didn't give up. They created thousands of new words for modern concepts, adapted ancient grammar, and established Hebrew-only schools. When Israel was founded in 1948, Hebrew became the national language. Today, 9 million people speak it. It is an incredible story that proves language death isn't always final and inspires revitalization efforts everywhere. Now let's travel to New Zealand. By the 1970s, the Māori language was on the brink of extinction. Only the elderly still spoke it. The youth had switched to English, but then activists fought back. In 1982, they opened the very first Māori language preschool, called a Kohanga Reo, or language nest. Here children were immersed in Māori, learning directly from elders. The model was a hit. Today, there are hundreds of these language nests, plus Māori immersion schools all the way through high school, and even Māori language universities. There's Māori TV and radio. The number of speakers has jumped from less than 50,000 in the 80s to around 150,000 now. It's an official language alongside English. This revival happened because of community action, government support, and educational innovation, showing how even developed nations can reverse language decline. A similar story unfolded in Hawaii. The Hawaiian language was nearly wiped out. After being banned in schools for almost a century, only about 2,000 native speakers were left by the 1980s, most of them elderly. Then, inspired by the Māori language nests, activists created their own preschools called Punana Leo in 1984. Parents committed to speaking only Hawaiian to their children. Soon, immersion schools expanded all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade. The University of Hawaii developed Hawaiian language programs. Newspapers, music, and film in Hawaiian began to flourish. Today, over 2,000 children are being raised speaking Hawaiian, and the total number of speakers has grown significantly. In just 40 years, through sheer dedication and cultural pride, they achieved a dramatic reversal, proving that even languages on the very edge of extinction can be brought back. Over in Wales, the Welsh language also seemed doomed. By the 1980s, only about 20% of the population spoke it, mostly in rural areas. But Welsh speakers got organized and demanded change. They fought for bilingual education, a Welsh language TV channel, and official status, and they won. The Welsh television channel S4C launched in 1982. Welsh became a required subject in schools. You started seeing bilingual road signs and government services offered in Welsh. The result? The decline stopped and the numbers started to grow. Today, about 30% of the Welsh population speaks Welsh. It's thriving in cities, not just the countryside, and young people are using it on social media and in pop music. It's become cool and modern, a true success story of political action and smart investment. Technology is a total game changer for language revitalization. Think about it. It used to be incredibly difficult to create written materials or recordings for endangered languages. Now, a smartphone can record audio and video, making language documentation cheap and easy for anyone. You can build online dictionaries, use language learning apps, and watch lessons on YouTube. Social media connects scattered speakers across the globe. Duolingo offers courses in Hawaiian and Navajo to millions of users. We're even looking at virtual reality for immersive learning and AI that can give these languages a digital voice. Of course, tech can't save a language on its own. You still need that human commitment. But it breaks down so many barriers and gives small language communities a fighting chance they never had before. One of the most powerful and personal revival methods is the Master-Apprentice program. This is where you pair a fluent elder, the master, with a young adult learner, the apprentice. For hundreds of hours, they just live their lives together, doing daily activities, but speaking only the endangered language. It's an intense, immersive experience that mimics how we naturally learn our first language. This method was pioneered in California for Native American languages that had only a few elderly speakers left. It's incredibly labor-intensive, taking years to create just one new fluent speaker. But it works. It creates a deep, personal bond and passes on cultural knowledge along with the words. For languages on the absolute brink, it has been a lifeline reviving tongues that seemed beyond saving. Ultimately, whether a language lives or dies often comes down to politics. Does a government fund education in minority languages? Does it grant them official status? Does it support media in those languages? These decisions are critical. Some countries, like India, Switzerland, and Canada, embrace their linguistic diversity and invest in it. Others actively suppress minority languages, forcing a single national language on everyone. This kind of policy accelerates language death. It's a tough reality, but language policy is always political. It's about power, identity, and what a nation values. Protecting the world's linguistic diversity requires political will and a shift in thinking, seeing diversity as a treasure, not a threat. But we have to be realistic. Not all languages can be revived. If a language has no living speakers and very little documentation, bringing it back is nearly impossible. You can't resurrect what you don't know, and revitalization can't be forced. If the community itself doesn't have the desire, even the best funded efforts will fail. Even in successful cases, the revived language is often different. It might have new slang or simplified grammar. It might be a second language for most speakers, not a mother tongue. Perfect restoration is a myth. But something is always better than nothing. A revived language, even an imperfect one, maintains that vital connection to culture and history. The real question is whether communities value their languages enough to fight for them. So what is the future of language diversity? Honestly, we are going to lose thousands of languages this century. Globalization pushes everyone toward a few major languages like English, Mandarin, and Spanish. It's a tragic reality, but there is hope. Technology is making it easier to preserve and teach smaller languages. Online communities are connecting speakers like never before, and the success stories we've seen show what's possible with passion and commitment. The question for all of us is whether we as a global community value this incredible diversity. Each language is a unique masterpiece of human thought. We've just journeyed through an incredible 100,000 years of human language history. We started in Africa, the birthplace of human speech, and followed our ancestors as they spread across the globe, their tongues diversifying into the thousands of languages we see today. We've explored the great language families, like Indo-European stretching from Europe to India, and the Austronesian languages that sailed across the Pacific. We looked at the stories of specific languages, English's global reach, Arabic's spread with faith, and Hebrew's incredible revival. But we also confronted a sobering crisis. Thousands of languages are dying, victims of globalization and economic pressure. Yet, we've also seen communities fighting back to preserve their precious linguistic heritage. Through it all, one thing has become clear. Language is so much more than just communication. It's our identity, our culture. It literally shapes our thoughts. To speak a language is to belong, to carry history, and to see the world in a completely unique way. Understanding the story of language is understanding the story of us. Language is what truly makes us human. Sure, other animals communicate. Birds sing, bees dance, whales call across vast oceans. But only humans possess a language with infinite expressive power. Language allows us to talk about yesterday, tomorrow, and even things that don't exist at all. It's what lets us discuss abstract ideas, concepts, and what-ifs. Every single human achievement, from art and science to philosophy and technology, rests on the foundation of language. Without it, there would be no civilization. We'd just be clever apes with slightly better tools. Language is what enabled us to cooperate in large groups, to pass down complex knowledge through generations, and to evolve culturally at an incredible speed. To understand language is to understand what makes our species so special. We are the species that speaks, and speaking made us who we are. There are over 7,000 languages on Earth, and every single one is a unique masterpiece. Each has its own sounds, its own grammar, its own vocabulary. Some languages have clicks, some use tones to change a word's meaning, and others have sounds you won't hear anywhere else. Some have over 10 grammatical cases, while others have none at all. Some languages even require you to specify how you know what you re-saying. Did you see it yourself, or did someone tell you? This incredible diversity isn't random. It reflects 100,000 years of human minds, solving the puzzle of communication in different ways and in different environments. Each language is a unique experiment in human expression, a different window onto the world. This diversity is precious because it shows us the incredible range of human thought and creativity. Losing a language isn't just losing words, it's losing a unique way of being human. Your language is a core part of who you are. The tongue you grew up with shapes how you think, how you feel, and how you connect with others. It's your link to your family, your community, and your ancestors. So when people lose their language, they often feel a profound sense of loss, a disconnect from their heritage, an inability to speak with their elders, a fading of their cultural identity. This is why language death is such a tragedy. It's not just about losing vocabulary. It's about communities losing a part of themselves. And this is why language revival is so powerful. Communities fighting to preserve their languages are fighting for their identities, for their right to exist as distinct peoples. Language is both deeply personal and deeply political. The way we speak declares who we are. The languages we choose to learn, to speak, or even to let go of, make powerful statements about who we are and where we belong. The scale of what we've already lost is staggering. Of the languages spoken just 500 years ago, thousands are now extinct. We will never hear them again. We'll never know what they sounded like, how they structured a sentence, or what unique perspectives they held. Think of the pre-Columbian Americas. Over half of their languages are gone. The same is true for Australian Aboriginal languages. Across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific, hundreds more have vanished. Each loss is permanent. We can't just reconstruct them. They disappeared, taking with them unique knowledge, stories, and entire ways of thinking. And this loss is speeding up. We're losing languages faster now than at any other point in human history. By the year 2100, we might lose half of the languages currently spoken. This is a catastrophic loss of our shared human heritage, comparable to burning down every library and museum on Earth. And yet this linguistic extinction gets so little attention. Languages are just as irreplaceable as species, and what we're losing is a fundamental part of what makes us human. But there is hope. Across the globe, communities are resisting language death. Look at Hebrew. It was a language unspoken for 2,000 years, and now millions use it every day. Hawaiian was down to just 2,000 speakers, but now thousands of children are growing up speaking it as their first language. Māori, Welsh, Navajo, all have been brought back from the brink. Communities worldwide are documenting their languages, creating learning materials, establishing immersion schools, and demanding political recognition. Technology is helping too, allowing endangered languages to build a digital presence that was impossible just a few years ago. Young people are embracing their heritage languages not as a source of shame, but as a source of pride. This resistance shows that we can preserve linguistic diversity. It takes commitment, resources, and political will, but it is possible. Every language saved is a victory for all of humanity. So what does the future of language look like? There are a few possibilities. In a pessimistic scenario, globalization continues its march, and by 2200, only a few hundred languages survive, the big ones like English, Mandarin, and Spanish. Humanity becomes linguistically uniform. But there's also an optimistic scenario, where technology like real-time translation makes it easy for everyone to communicate while speaking their own mother tongue. In this future, communities and governments invest in preserving languages, and thousands survive. The most realistic scenario is probably somewhere in between. Major languages will likely continue to dominate, but hundreds, maybe thousands, of smaller languages will survive in digital niches, kept alive by dedicated communities. Which future we get depends on the choices we're making right now. Do we value diversity over efficiency? Our unique identities over a globalized economy? The answers will determine the languages our grandchildren will speak. So what can you, as an individual, do? If you speak a threatened language, the most important thing is to use it. Teach it to children. Write in it. Create art with it. Don't let it become a memory. If you're part of a community with a threatened language, support revitalization efforts and demand resources. If you're not, you can still be an ally. Advocate for the rights of indigenous language speakers and support multilingual education. The first step is just to learn about this crisis. And hey, why not learn a second language? It's a fantastic way to open your mind. You can also support organizations that document and preserve endangered languages. Even small actions matter. Languages are kept alive one speaker, one family, one community at a time. You have more power than you think. So why should we care? Some people argue that having fewer languages just makes life easier. But that view is incredibly short-sighted. Linguistic diversity matters for so many reasons. For scientists, different languages are like natural experiments that show us the amazing flexibility of the human brain. Culturally, languages hold unique knowledge accumulated over thousands of years about medicinal plants, local ecosystems, and ancient traditions. Morally, being able to speak your own language is a fundamental human right. Forcing people to abandon their tongue is a form of cultural violence. And practically, we know that multilingual people and societies are often more creative and cognitively flexible. Ultimately, linguistic diversity makes humanity richer, more interesting, and more resilient. A world with fewer languages is an impoverished world for us all. The story of human language isn't over. It's being written right now. Every time someone speaks, every time a child learns their first words, every time languages change and adapt. New languages are being born, old languages are being revived, and yes, some are dying. You are a part of this story. The languages you speak, how you speak them, the languages you choose to learn. These choices all shape our collective linguistic future. Every speaker matters. Every language matters. As we finish our journey, remember that language is alive. The question for us is, what role will we play in its ongoing story? Will we be agents of preservation or homogenization? The story of language is the story of humanity, and the story continues with you. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through 100,000 years of human speech. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories about our shared human experience. See you next time.